Chapter 114. He Yan's nap was indeed longer than usual. She even had a dream. In the dream, she was fighting with Raida Muji. That commander was brutal and cruel. She pointed a sword at his head, and he suddenly raised his head. It was actually Hirufei's face. The sword in He Yan's hand fell to the ground with a clang. She opened her eyes. Her gaze landed on the soft bed curtains. The mattress beneath her was warm. She lowered her head to look. She was lying on the bed, perfectly fine. He Yan still remembered that before she fainted, she was in the martial arts arena. Xiao Ju and Raida Muji were fighting. In the distance, the reinforcements from the southern prefecture had already arrived. What was the current situation? Was it already over? She propped herself up and slowly sat up. As soon as she moved, she pulled at the wound on her waist. It hurt so much that she couldn't help but furrow her brows. After pausing for a while, she supported herself on the bed and sat up. The wound on her body had already been bandaged. She had returned to her room, the room next to Xiao Ju. There wasn't a single person in the room. She wanted to call someone to ask about the current situation, but she couldn't. Just as she was thinking, the door was pushed open. A young man walked in with medicine. He closed the door and carried the medicine to He Yan's bed. Seeing that He Yan had already sat up, he smiled. "You're awake? Looks like you've recovered well." This was an unfamiliar face. He Yan had seen this person for the first time in the Liang province guards. However, looking at his clothes, he definitely wasn't a new soldier. He Yan stared at his face. Her mind went blank for a moment. Suddenly, she came back to her senses and almost blurted out the other party's name. Fortunately, she reacted in time. The words were at the tip of her tongue, but she forcefully swallowed them back down. That person looked at her with a smile and said, "My name is Lin Shuanghe. I'm a doctor and also Xiao Huijin's friend. I was the one who treated your wound." Seeing that He Yan only stared at him without saying anything, Lin Shuanghe thought for a moment and said, "Don't misunderstand. I didn't take off your clothes. It was Xiao Huijin who did it. I was only responsible for treating your wound. I also know your true identity." He lowered his voice and leaned closer to He Yan. "Little sister, I really admire you." "He Yan," she nodded at Lin Shuanghe with difficulty. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Lin Shuanghe smiled and handed the medicine to her. "Drink it. It's almost cold." He Yan took the bowl and drank the medicine slowly. He could not hide the shock in his heart. Lin Shuanghe actually came to the Liang province guard. He Yan was no stranger to Lin Shuanghe. In fact, he was also He Yan's classmate. He Yan felt that she was actually more familiar with Lin Shuanghe than with Xiao Ju among the youths who went to school together in the Xianchang school. There was no other reason. In fact, it was because he was the one who fought with He Yan for the last place in the academy examinations. 8 out of 10 times, it was him. Yes, Lin Shuanghe looked like he had an intelligent face. In fact, he was terrible at the civil and military examinations. He was different from He Yan. He Yan worked hard but was still the last place. Lin Shuanghe did not work hard at all. He had a good relationship with Xiao Ju. They were inseparable every day. His homework was copied from his good friend. When the teacher asked him to copy the copybook, he paid someone to help him copy it. The youngsters of the virtuous Prosperity Mansion were either from wealthy or respectable families. None of them lacked those few coins. However, every time this Lin Shuanghe took out a rare treasure, there would always be people who coveted it. He Yan could not resist the temptation and helped Lin Shuanghe copy books for an entire night and received a jade grasshopper. Lin Shuanghe was extremely rich. The Lin family had been practicing medicine for generations. Their ancestors worked in the Imperial Institute of Medicine in the palace. Now Lin Shuanghe's grandfather, Lin Qingtan, was the head of the Imperial Institute of Medicine. Lin Qingtan's youngest son, Lin Mu, was an imperial physician. He was very outstanding in women's medicine and was deeply loved by the imperial concubines in the palace. Lin Mu also liked to develop secret beauty recipes. He had won the favor of the Empress Dowager, Empress and imperial concubines and was rewarded from time to time. These rewards were given to Lin Shuanghe. Lin Mu only had Lin Shuanghe as a son and doted on him very much. Lin Shuanghe relied on his family's wealth to spend his days in the Xianchang school. The Lin family did not have high expectations for Lin Shuanghe. They had never thought of asking Lin Shuanghe to be outstanding in civil and military matters. They also did not care about his homework as long as he did not throw his face in front of the Lin family. There was no pressure in the Lin family, and the only people they had to deal with were the teachers in the Xianchang school. Thus, Lin Shuanghe's school life was filled with relaxation and contentment from playing with cats and dogs. The debauchee, Lin Shuanghe, had fallen. Seeing He Yan working so hard, he did not understand. Once when He Yan was busy reciting books, He Yan came over and asked, "Brother He, you are working so hard every day but you are always in the last place. What is the meaning of this?" He Yan ignored him and continued reciting books. Lin Shuanghe was bored and left by himself. After a few days, He Yan went from the last place to the second last place in the academy examinations. He came to find He Yan again and asked, "Brother He, let's make a deal. This time's academy examinations, can you still be in the last place and allow me to be in the second last place?" He Yan. Teacher complained in front of my grandfather and my grandfather scolded my father. My father ordered that I must improve in the next academy examinations, otherwise he will cut off my source of income. Now I am in the last place. As long as you are in the last place, won't I improve? He Yan. Brother He, I beg you. This youth pleaded, "If you help me this time, I will give you the phoenix hairpin bestowed by Imperial Concubine Shu." "I don't want." He Yan rejected, "I am not a girl, what do I need the hairpin for?" "You can give it to your mother." Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and continued to negotiate with him, "Or you can tell me what you like and I will give it to you as long as you help me this time." "I'm sorry." He Yan shook his head, "I really want to help but I am unable to." "Brother Lin, why don't you find Brother Huai Jin to help you revise your homework? His homework is so good and as long as he gives you a few pointers, you will definitely improve." Lin Shuanghe heard this and rolled his eyes. "Spare me please. Who wants his pointers? He only cares about sleeping all day and has no patience. If I want his pointers, I would rather study it myself." Saying that, he sighed, "How can there be a person in this world who sleeps all day and is still in the first place? He must be a monster." He Yan looked at Xiao Ju who was sleeping on the desk and deeply agreed with Lin Shuanghe's words. The heavens must be Xiao Ju's biological father, that's why he was so fond of him. Lin Shuanghe hung his head dejectedly and looked very pitiful. He Yan looked at him and felt some compassion in his heart. She said to him, "Actually, you don't have to be discouraged. I have to revise my homework every day. If you don't mind, you can come with me. You can take the homework that I've organized and look at it. It's okay." Saying that, she felt a bit uneasy. "However, I'm not very good at organizing it." Lin Shuanghe looked at her. He Yan felt his hair stand on end. The youth closed his fan. "Okay. Well, if I'm going to revise with you, then so be it. I also want to try what it feels like to have a beam hanging over my head." In fact, Lin Shuanghe's popularity in the Xianchang dojo was much better than He Yan's. He didn't wear a mask and didn't act alone. He was elegant and generous with his money. He didn't put on airs and handled things smoothly. He would often treat everyone to delicious food. Moreover, which youth didn't have a mother or sister? If they had a headache or fever, they would have to beg Imperial Physician Lin to treat them. In addition, his grandfather had a good relationship with the nobles in the palace, so no one dared to offend him. Therefore, Lin Shuanghe was liked by all the youths. However, liking him was one matter and revising his homework was another matter. Logically speaking, if Lin Shuanghe wanted to ask for help, there would be many people who were willing to help. But his foundation was too bad. The youths in the Xianchang dojo were all gifted and didn't have the patience and time to accompany him to revise from the beginning. After a while, no one was willing to take up this tough task. But He Yan wasn't the same. They were about the same. No one was better than the other. Therefore, before the next academy examinations, He Yan and Lin Shuanghe spent the entire day revising their homework. Lin Shuanghe's martial sciences were not good, so he directly gave up. While he was revising with He Yan, he was also revising on the literary subjects. No matter what other people said, they were still decent. In the evening after school, everyone went to eat. The two of them sat in the classroom, reciting to each other. But this kind of recitation was usually done by Lin Shuanghe, who was sitting with a book in his hand while He Yen recited in a cadence. She said, "The way of the university is to be virtuous, to be close to the people, to stop at being virtuous. To know when to stop, then to settle, then to be calm, then to be at peace. The ancient desire to be virtuous, first. Reciting to this point, she forgot what she was going to say. He Yen looked at Lin Shuanghe. Lin Shuanghe didn't give her a reminder as he ate the dried fruit while deliberately teasing her. First what? He Yan's cheeks turned red as she couldn't remember what she was going to say next. But Lin Shuanghe still urged her. First what? Quickly say it. First down, then up. He Yen randomly made up a story. Cough, cough, cough. Someone behind them choked on his tea. The two of them turned around and saw Xiaoju lazily propping himself up in front of the table in the dark. Huaijin, you haven't left yet? Lin Shuanghe was surprised. I thought you left a long time ago. The young man stood up from the table. He probably just woke up and was still a little drowsy. He walked in front of He Yen and Lin Shuanghe and casually asked Lin Shuanghe, "What are you doing?" "I'm revising my homework." Lin Shuanghe put his arm around He Yan's shoulder and said as if they were very familiar with each other, "I've decided to improve together with Brother He." "Revising your homework?" He Yan asked. "Yes, Brother He also gave me the notes that he sorted out." "Brother He is really generous," Lin Shuanghe said. Xiaoju glanced at He Yen and reached out to pick up the notes on the table. Before He Yen could stop him, he had already flipped through the notes. It was filled with He Yan's private summary of what the teacher had said in class on a daily basis. The one that Xiaoju was holding was probably computational classics. He Yen was very tall, so he could only look up at him. The young man casually flipped to a page. His gaze paused and the corners of his mouth twitched. He Yen was a little nervous. After a while, Xiaoju put the notes back on the table and said expressionlessly, "There are 5 questions on 1 page. You got 3 questions wrong." He Yen, huh? Lin Shuanghe was also at a loss. Xiaoju glanced at the two of them and curled his lips. His tone was not without sarcasm. "You want to improve together?" Lin Shuanghe. He turned and left. Under the mask, He Yan's face and ears were red. He Yen still clearly remembered the results of the academy examinations. She and Lin Shuanghe were tied at the bottom. She did not know how Lin Shuanghe went back to report. Whether it was considered improvement or not, no one knew. Now that many years had passed, she did not expect to meet Lin Shuanghe again. It was such a scene. Thousands of miles away from the capital, the Liang State Guards was not a classroom filled with the sound of books. It was a battlefield that had just experienced a massacre. They were no longer unlucky classmates revising their homework together. One was a recruit and the other was a doctor. How mysterious was fate? He Yen drank all the medicine in the bowl and put it aside. He looked at the person in front of him. Compared to many years ago, Lin Shuanghe's eyebrows had matured a lot. He had lost some of his youthful immaturity and looked more mature. When he didn't speak, he was an elegant young master. However, as soon as he opened his mouth, his bearing completely collapsed. He moved closer to He Yen and said with a smile, "Little sister, tell me honestly. Did you come to the Liang State Guard for Xiao Huaijin?" He Yen, what? You like him? So you chased after him to the Liang State Guards? He said in admiration, "Your courage is commendable." He Yen was silent for a moment and explained, "It's not like that. I met with some things in the capital and could not stay there. I had no other choice, so I joined the army." Xiaoju and Lin Shuanghe had always had a good relationship. Since Lin Shuanghe knew that she was a woman, Xiaoju must have mentioned these things to Lin Shuanghe. "Then how did he find out that you were a woman?" Lin Shuanghe did not believe her. "I think the relationship between you two is not ordinary. He discovered my identity because military governor Xiao is resourceful and suspicious of me. He sent people to the capital to investigate my identity." "Dr. Lin," He Yen said patiently, "can I ask you for a favor?" Lin Shuanghe said seriously, please speak. Can you not call me little sister, in the Liang State Guards? There are too many people here. If my identity is exposed, it will bring trouble to the governor. Normally, you can just call me Brother He. Little Brother He, this is a small matter. Of course I can. Lin Shuanghe looked at her and shook his head with a sigh. You are a delicate and pretty woman. Why did you come here to suffer instead of staying at home? It makes one's heart ache. He Yen, here it comes again. Speaking of which, Lin Shuanghe really hadn't changed in the slightest when it came to this matter. He was different from Xiaoju. When Xiaoju was young, the number of girls who adored him could line up from the east to the west of the city. However, he didn't give any of them a second glance. Lin Shuanghe was the other extreme. As long as it was a girl, no, as long as it was a female, no matter if it was a human or an animal, he would return the favor with 120% patience and tenderness. When he called them girls, he didn't call them little sister. It was intimate and tactful, as if he really had so many brothers and sisters in his family. When he was young, there were many girls who tried to get close to Lin Shuanghe using Xiaoju. Lin Shuanghe was not as unreasonable as Xiaoju. He was friendly and amiable, and he didn't get angry over these things. Instead, he was happy to run errands for them. Today, he would help this little sister deliver a flower letter. Tomorrow, he would help this little sister bring a plate of desserts. He was born with good looks. As time went by, some of the girls who originally wanted to get close to Xiaoju had their hearts set on Lin Shuanghe. Of course, Lin Shuanghe was also very principled. No matter if they liked him or not, they were all little sisters. When he was young, he called Hiyen Brother He, in a righteous and awe-inspiring manner. Now that he had changed to a gentle tone and affectionately called him little sister, Hiyen really couldn't stand it. He immediately had goosebumps all over his body. You haven't recovered from your old injuries, and now you have new ones. Especially that blade, it's very deep. I've treated it for you, but it won't heal in a day or two. For the next few days, you need to stay in bed and recuperate. You don't have to do anything like daily training. Lin Shuanghe looked at her. As for the scars, you don't have to worry too much. Our Lin family has a good way to remove scars and regenerate skin. Although it won't be able to recover to its original appearance, it can still heal 70 to 80%. It won't be too glaring. He Yen nodded. Thank you, Dr. Lin. You don't have to thank me. Among all the girls I've treated, you're the one with the most serious injuries and the one with the best pain tolerance. You've really opened my eyes. Also, you're Huijin's friend, so you can treat me as a friend in the future. If you have any difficulties, just let me know. At this point, He Yen thought of something and asked, Dr. Lin, is the commander-in-chief here? I have something important to tell him. He's outside. Wait a moment. Lin Shuanghe stood up and opened the door. He said to the people in the courtyard, Xiao Huijin, He Yen is looking for you. Xiaoju was talking to Shenhan. When she heard this, she nodded, indicating that she understood. After a while, Shenhan left and walked over. Lin Shuanghe was waiting for him at the door. When he came in, he was about to follow him in. Xiaoju stopped and looked at him. Lin Shuanghe was confused. What do you want? Wait outside. Why? Lin Shuanghe asked. Is there something that I can't hear? Xiaoju glanced at him and said calmly, It's a military secret. Then, she closed the door in Lin Shuanghe's face. He Yen, all right, if Lin Shuanghe was here, there were indeed some things that were inconvenient for him to know. Even though they were schoolmates, the current situation in the Liang Province Guard had made even her frightened. Xiaoju walked over. He Yen looked up at him. They hadn't seen each other for half a month, but it felt like a long time had passed. He was still as cold and lazy as ever, as if there hadn't been a battle not long ago. His clothes were still as clean as autumn water. He Yen was startled. When he came back to his senses, he said, Commander-in-Chief, Lei Ho is in the dungeon. I know. He sat down on a chair in front of the bed and looked at He Yen. He said carelessly, I've already sent someone to guard him. He Yen sighed in relief. Since he had sent someone to guard him, he wasn't afraid that Lei Ho would kill himself midway. Xiao Ju should know this better than him. In reality, ever since he had fought with Lei Ho during the battle for the flag, He Yan had vaguely sensed that something was wrong. However, that feeling was very faint, and she couldn't figure it out until she was locked up in the dungeon. He Yan was certain that there was a spy in the Jiangzhou guards who was cooperating with Hu Yuanzhong. After combing through the people he knew, his suspicions once again returned to Lei Ho. Lei Ho was a bit strange. During the battle for the flag, she had fought with Lei Ho. At that time, Lei Ho had used a sword. He Yan remembered very clearly that Lei Ho used his left hand when he used a sword. This wasn't a big deal. Perhaps he was left-handed and was used to using his left hand. However, later on, when Lei Ho entered the Vanguard Battalion, He Yan had also gone to watch the Vanguard Battalion train. At that time, Lei Ho had used a spear with his right hand. If he was left-handed, there was no need for him to deliberately use his right hand, unless he wanted to hide something. He Yan thought about it and felt that when Lei Ho had used a sword during the battle for the flag, it had been a bit awkward. It seemed that he was more used to using a saber. Using a saber to dance with a sword wasn't that natural. That day, the masked man who had led her to the mountain was the same. Later on, when Raida Musi led his troops, Lei Ho wanted to go to the dungeon to silence him, but He Yan subdued him instead. He Yan also understood that if Lei Ho was related to the Chang people, then if he used a saber, it would most likely be a scimitar. Perhaps he was afraid of being discovered, so he used a sword at first. However, He Yan was sensitive. Lei Ho might have felt that this was not safe, so he simply used his right hand. It would be harder to find traces. However, He Yan still had some doubts. She asked, "Governor, you went to Zhangtai. Did you come back so quickly?" Even if everything went smoothly in Zhangtai, after going back and forth, he wouldn't have come back at this time. Moreover, he had brought back the Nanfu soldiers. "I didn't go to Zhangtai," Xiao Ju said. He Yan looked at him. "The distress signal from Zhangtai was fake," he said. "I went to Qingnan and brought some of the Nanfu soldiers over." He Yan was silent. She had already thought of this when she began to suspect Hu Yuanzhong. This was probably a trap to lure Xiao Ju away. When Xiao Ju wasn't there, Raida Musi would lead the Chang people to fight the Liangzhou Guard recruits. How could the recruits who had only trained for half a year be a match for the Chang people? This battle would be difficult to win. However, Raida Musi would never have dreamed that Xiao Ju didn't go to Zhangtai at all. He Yan asked, "Then did you deliberately put Lei Ho into the vanguard? You suspected him for a long time?" Xiao Ju curled her lips. "Yes." He Yan was inwardly shocked. In the battle for the flags, she was clearly the one who had taken all 20 flags, but Xiao Ju chose Lei Ho, who had been defeated by her, to go to the vanguard. He Yan couldn't understand it no matter how hard he tried. Now, everything suddenly became clear in front of him. Xiao Ju had probably already suspected Lei Ho's identity as a traitor at that time, and deliberately made such a good show to lure the snake out of its hole. She actually didn't realize. This was a trap. Boo Boo was much earlier than all of them. How could Raida Musi have known that from the beginning, she had already stepped into the trap and couldn't turn back? "Commander-in-Chief, you are so amazing," He Yan said sincerely. Although they were both generals, Xiao Ju had some skills and he couldn't help but admire her. Xiao Ju looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. "Not as amazing as you." "He Yan, me?" He crossed his arms and calmly looked at He Yan. "Are you done asking? If you are, then it's my turn." These words were so strange that He Yan didn't understand. He only asked, "What do you mean?" He laughed and took out something from his chest and threw it in front of He Yan. He Yan paused and picked it up to take a look. It was a piece of paper that had been folded in half. On it was a rough map and words. Upon closer inspection, it was the map and words of the Liangzhou Guard. That night when she was locked up in the dungeon, Song Taotao came to visit her. He Yan asked her to help him with something. It was to hand this matter over to Shenhan. At that time, He Yan didn't know what Shenhan would do if he saw this, but the situation was critical and he didn't have time to think about it. He Yan was prepared for the worst. If she really couldn't get out, or if she couldn't stop the situation from developing, this piece of paper would be her final trump card. Now, The trump card was in Xiao Ju's hands. Lady he tilted his head and looked at He Yen with a smile that wasn't a smile. His voice was faint. Explain. Chapter 115. Explain? How could she explain this? At the time, the situation was critical. He Yen was locked up in the dungeon. She guessed that at this time, the enemy would most likely make a move. She asked Song Taotao to find a pen and paper and wrote a letter to Shenhan. The letter had a map of the Liang province guard drawn on it. He Yen had been there for half a year, so the map was drawn in detail. She guessed that the enemy would cross the Wulu River. She suggested that Shenhan send hundreds to 1,000 archers to hide in the Wulu River and head toward the Liang province guard station in the depths of the forest. Once the enemy crossed the river and came to the Liang province guard station, they would fall into an ambush. At the time, I was framed for murder and sent to the dungeon. He Yen thought for a moment, then explained, although the others didn't believe me, I felt that the enemy was after something big. Governor, you weren't there. If something really happened, the Liang province guard would be in danger. So I drew this map and asked Miss Song to give it to Shinjiao. However, at the time, I wasn't sure if Shinjiao would do as I said. I was just treating a dead horse like a living one. Although Shenhan didn't believe him, he was still cautious when it came to the Liang province guard. He had people hide in the depths of the forest, as He Yen said. That was why Rida Muzi's troops fell into an ambush when they came to the training field. They were already at a disadvantage by the shore, and their morale was low. Xiao Ju looked up. Why the shore? The small enemy is trapped. To catch a thief, the door must be closed. It's not that I'm afraid it'll be easy, I'm afraid it'll be easy for others to get it. He laughed. You've learned the art of war quite well. What's with the granary? Behind the Liang province guard station is White Moon Mountain, next to the Wulu River. This path is the way out for you, Governor. Further ahead is the path to enter the city. I guess that the enemy was after something big, and the Liang province guard station might not be enough. If we were brought into the enemy's position, the first thing we would do would be to burn the granary. Without supplies, the Liang province guard recruits wouldn't be able to last long. They could either be trapped here or enter the city. Once the city gates were opened and the enemy troops entered the city, Liangzhou City would fall. That's why I told Shinjiao in the letter that I ordered people to hide in the dark and guard the granary to prevent anyone from setting fire to it. In fact, Rida Muzi had indeed sent people to set the place on fire, but they were taken down by the Liangzhou recruits who were already prepared. Your guess is very accurate, Xiao Ju said slowly. She leaned forward and stared into her eyes. You've planned everything out, young lady? His eyes were deep and serene, as clear as autumn waters. He Yen felt a little uncomfortable looking at them. She didn't know how to respond. Why was she able to come up with such a flawless plan? It was because she had experienced the Chang people's act of burning granaries countless times. As long as they could confirm that the other party was from the Chang, they would naturally know what they would do next. But she couldn't say that to Xiao Ju. You seem to know a lot. Did your father teach you the art of war at home? He asked with a smile. He Yen knew that this person was already suspicious, so she simply made up a story. No, I didn't. I learned it all myself. Doesn't the commander-in-chief think that I'm a natural talent? He laughed coldly. Liar, you're lying again, aren't you? The commander-in-chief always suspects that I'm a liar. You should at least show evidence. He Yen became a little bolder. You suspected Lei Ho, so you put Lei Ho into the vanguard battalion. Finally, Lei Ho gave himself away. You suspected that there was something wrong with me, so you put me by your side. I'm only separated from the commander-in-chief's room by a wall. Logically speaking, if there was something wrong with me, it would be easier for the commander-in-chief to find out. But until now, other than the fact that I'm a woman, nothing else has happened. The commander-in-chief's words are a little unreasonable. Xiao Ju was so angry that he laughed. I'm unreasonable? The commander-in-chief has kept me by your side for so long. Other than my loyalty, alertness, bravery, and wisdom, what else have you discovered? Nothing at all. Yen spread out his hands. As a general, You should be fair in your rewards and punishments. This time, I can be considered to have solved the crisis of the Liang province guards and made a contribution. Shouldn't the commander-in-chief reward me? Reward? He asked slowly, what kind of reward do you want? He Yen sat up straighter and leaned closer to him. His eyes lit up as he stared at him. Can I go to the Nine Flags Battalion? No. He Yen asked, why? The Nine Flags Battalion doesn't accept liars who are full of lies, he answered indifferently. I'm not lying. Lady He stared at her with his beautiful eyes and suddenly curved his lips. Although I don't know what you're hiding, he paused, then said, one day, your secret will be revealed. He Yan's heart skipped a beat and he forgot to answer. He stood up and walked out. He Yan hurriedly said, Then what about Hu Yuanzhong? Xiao Ju didn't stop walking. He's dead, she said, then walked out the door. He Yan was stunned. He's dead? When Xiao Ju went out, Lin Shuanghe was already gone. Only Fei Nu was standing guard outside. Xiao Ju asked, where did Lin Shuanghe go? Dr. Lin said he was going to Lady Shen's place to help make some medicine, Fei Nu answered. The new recruits who died in the Liang province guards have already been settled. The new recruits who died in battle would be buried at the foot of Mount Baiyue. These young lives didn't even have time to experience a real battle before they were slaughtered under a knife in the dark. Xiao Ju pinched the space between her brows. After receiving the news from Zhang Tai, he immediately set out for Zhang Tai. However, halfway through his journey, he felt that something was wrong. He secretly contacted the commander of the Nine Flags Battalion and learned that Zhang Tai was indeed being harassed by the Yudo. However, it wasn't as serious as the letter said. Halfway through, he turned his horse around and sent a portion of the Nanfu soldiers stationed in Qingnan over. The other party must be coming for the Liang province guards, or in other words, coming for him. Right now, he had just taken over the Liang province guards. If something happened to the Liang province guards in Xiao Ju's hands, the emperor would have a valid reason to take back his military power. The ministers in the court who were dissatisfied with him could hit him when he was down. He wouldn't be able to be the commander for long. Those Western Chang people? They're not Western Chang people, Xiao Ju interrupted Fei Nu, they're Yudo. Fei Nu was stunned. Other than Raida Muzi and his trusted aides who are Chang people, the others are all Yudo. Fei Nu asked, they're using someone else to kill them? They're trying to kill me, he chuckled and turned around. Tell Shen Han and all the other instructors to come to my room. He Yen rested for a while after Xiao Ju left. Song Tao Tao, Cheng Lisu, and Shen Mushu arrived. The two children each carried a large basket of food. Because the Chang people had just come, the Liang province guards were on high alert and couldn't enter the city. Therefore, there wasn't any good food like the restaurants. However, there was still fish soup and steamed meat. Song Tao Tao ran to He Yan's bed and asked him, are you feeling better? Not bad. He Yan smiled and said, thank you for asking Shen Jiaodo for help. The little girl showed a rare shyness. After a while, she said, it's nothing. You were in prison at the time. Also, you saved me, so we're even. When did my big brother save you? Cheng Lisu still didn't know that Song Taodao had been kidnapped by Sun Ling in Liang province and asked suspiciously. This is a secret. Why should I tell you? Song Taodao didn't treat Cheng Lisu well. That's my big brother. Of course, I have the right to know. Why should you hide it from me? Seeing that the two were about to quarrel again, Shen Mushue shook her head helplessly and said to He Yen, little brother I wronged you before. She was talking about Hu Yuanzhong. It's okay, He Yen said, they even hid it from the instructors. It's normal for them to hide it from you. Also, Miss Shen was in a hurry to save him and didn't think too much. Oh right. She thought of something. I heard from military governor Xiao that Hu Yuanzhong is dead? Shen Mushue nodded. That Hu Yuanzhong wanted to kidnap me when Raida Muzi appeared. Later, when the commander-in-chief rushed back, the commander-in-chief's guards fought with him. This person died in the hands of the guards. If you knew he was going to die, you wouldn't have bothered to save him and waste medicinal herbs, Cheng Lisu muttered. He Yen thought that Hu Yuanzhong really liked Shen Mushue's beauty and didn't give up on his evil intentions. When the two armies were fighting, he actually wanted to take advantage of the chaos to kidnap her. His intentions were worthy of death. Little brother He, Shen Mushue looked at her and asked seriously, I don't understand. Why did you suspect that there was something wrong with Hu Yuanzhong at that time? And every suspicion was accurate. After all, at that time, Hu Yuanzhong was well behaved in the Liang province guards. Even though Xiao Mai and the others received He Yan's orders to keep an eye on Hu Yuanzhong every day, they didn't see anything wrong with him. He Yan couldn't say that it was because of the rash on Hu Yuanzhong's hand. It showed that she was very familiar with the Chang people. After a moment of silence, she said, It's the paper with the love poem. Paper? Shen Mushue was stunned. The relic that Hu Yuanzhong's deceased wife left for him? That's right. He Yan said, You were all moved by his deep feelings, but such a person would never look at you with that kind of gaze. What kind of gaze? Shen Mushue was puzzled. He Yan scratched her head. It's the kind of gaze that a man has for a woman. She thought that Shen Mushue was a girl after all. She was thin-skinned. If she said that she was drooling, it would inevitably make her feel embarrassed. It was better to say it tactfully. But this Miss Shen wasn't an ordinary girl. When she heard this, she didn't feel embarrassed. She just asked curiously, How did you know? This question was a bit difficult for He Yan. She said, I've been paying attention to Miss Shen. Shen Mushue frowned. Song Taotao saw that the situation wasn't good. She hurriedly stepped forward to block He Yan's gaze from Shen Mushue. She nonchalantly picked up the cup beside her and handed it to He Yan. Big brother He, drink some water. He Yan. Thank you. As they were talking, they heard someone's laughter outside. When they turned around, they saw that Lin Shuanghe had returned. He fanned himself in the middle of winter and walked over gracefully. He had a gentle smile on his face. I was wondering why it was so lively. It turns out that everyone is here. Uncle Lin, Cheng Lisu shouted. Lin Shuanghe and Xiao Ju were about the same age. Cheng Lisu and Lin Shuanghe were about the same age. But because she called Xiao Ju uncle, she followed suit and called Lin Shuanghe uncle. However, Lin Shuanghe probably wasn't satisfied with this form of address. His smile faltered and wasn't as smooth as before. Shen Mushue stood up. Young Master Lin. Miss Shen, I just came back from the medical center. A few recruits woke up and were complaining that their wounds hurt. Do you want to take a look? Shen Mushue was stunned. Is that so? Then she looked at He Yan. Little brother He, I'll go to the medical center to take a look. Do you feel any discomfort? No. Before He Yan could reply, Song Taotao spoke first. She looked at Shen Mushue as if she was facing a great enemy. If there's anything wrong, young Master Lin is here. He will treat it. Doesn't Uncle Lin only treat women? Cheng Lisu asked curiously. Ahem. Lin Shuanghe closed his fan. Occasionally, I can make an exception. If that's the case, I'll leave first. Shen Mushue bowed to everyone and turned to leave the room. Song Taotao heaved a sigh of relief. He Yan. She had a headache and didn't know what to do. Lin Shuanghe was a smart person. He could tell that she was in a difficult position. He said to Song Taotao and Cheng Lisu, I'm going to take a look at your big brother He's wounds. After that, he needs to rest. It's best if you two don't disturb him. Resting again? Cheng Lisu asked. We just met him, and it hasn't even been a cup of tea's time. I still have something to say to big brother He. That can only be said after your big brother He recovers. Lin Shuanghe held his shoulder and pushed him towards the door. Don't tell me you want to watch him lie in bed and never recover? Song Taotao turned to look at He Yan. He Yan pretended to be powerless and held his forehead. She bit her lip and pulled Cheng Lisu out. Since that's the case, let's not disturb him. Let him rest more. We'll come again tomorrow. Cheng Lisu said, If you want to talk, just talk. Why are you pulling me? Song Taotao, do you think I want to touch you? The two children left noisily. Lin Shuanghe closed the door. He Yan sighed. Lin Shuanghe was really good. After so many years, his ability to read people's body language was still top-notch. No wonder he was so popular in the Xianchang dojo. He Yen couldn't help but feel grateful to him for being able to think of what others were thinking. Little sister, you're really amazing. Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and walked over with a smile. You're already like this, but you can still make girls fight over you. Amazing. He Yen said weakly, you flatter me. She wasn't an idiot. Of course, she understood Song Taodao's thoughts. However, a little girl's thoughts were ever-changing. She would probably be fine after a while. Dr. Lin, did you come to find me for something? Nothing. Lin Shuanghe sighed. There's still blood everywhere in the Liang province guards. The corpses of the Chang people are piling up. My head hurts just looking at them. Although I'm a doctor, I don't like to see blood. I'm very annoyed, so I came to your place to hide. Lin Shuanghe was also a pampered young master. He probably wasn't used to the bitter cold of the Liang province guards. She borrowed Qing Li's room. It was spacious and comfortable. Perhaps it was because she was injured, but there was a charcoal fire. It was very warm. In comparison, it was more suitable to laze around than outside. Why don't you go find Military Governor Xiao? He Yen asked. His room is much more comfortable than mine. I want to go too. Lin Shuanghe shrugged. I bumped into him when I came over. He brought some people to the dungeon. Maybe something happened. I'll go find him when he comes back. The dungeon? He Yen was stunned. What? You want to go? Lei Ho was the only one in the dungeon. Xiao Ju probably went to the dungeon to interrogate Lei Ho. She had fought with Lei Ho before, so she might be able to help. He Yen said, I want to go. Can young Master Lin help? Originally I couldn't. Lin Shuanghe waved his fan reservedly. But since it's a request from a beautiful girl, it's fine. He stood up. Let's go. I'll get you a stick to support you. At the entrance of the dungeon, Xiao Ju, Shen Han, and the others were walking in. The number of guards at the entrance had doubled. There were also people watching from inside. They were afraid that Lei Ho would commit suicide in the dungeon. The wind lifted Xiao Ju's clothes. He asked as he walked, Where's Du Mao? He's been locked up as per your orders. Shen Han wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, he said, but regarding Lei Ho's matter, he might not know. With me, there's no possibility. Rules are rules. The young man's expression was indifferent. If you're wrong, you have to be punished. Shen Han didn't dare to say anything. When the guards in the dungeon saw Xiao Ju, they made way for him. Xiao Ju took off his cloak and handed it to Fei Nu. Then, he looked at the people in the dungeon. When He Yen fought with Lei Ho, he fed Lei Ho knockout pills and tied him up with Song Taodao's belt. As a result, when Xiao Ju's men arrived, Lei Ho had yet to wake up. But now, Lei Ho was in a much worse state than Lei Ho when he fought with He Yen. His hands and feet were all bound by wooden shackles. He couldn't move. Even his neck couldn't move. He didn't have any strength left. He couldn't bite his tongue to commit suicide. Once he lost the chance to control his own life, he was like a fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Open the door, Xiao Ju said. The guards stood up and opened the door. Even though the door was opened, Lei Ho could only move his mouth. His entire body couldn't move. He looked at the person in front of him. The young man's eyebrows and eyes were unbelievably beautiful under the light. But his gaze was as cold as ice. Don't waste your energy, Lei Ho squeezed out a smile. I won't say anything. The guard moved a chair over and Xiao Ju sat down. He looked down at Lei Ho. His voice was calm. A few months ago, during the battle for the flag on White Moon Mountain, you lost to He Yen. But I still chose you to enter the vanguard. Do you know why? Lei Ho's smile froze. He stared at Xiao Ju in disbelief. Xiao Ju raised his eyebrows. You guessed it? You did it on purpose? Lei Ho's voice was hoarse. A recruit who didn't make a sound during the day training. But during the battle for the flag, he shocked the world. What are you, a genius? Xiao Ju mocked. Are you that kind of genius? Lei Ho was speechless. He had schemed and racked his brains to enter the Liang State Guards. He had thought of every possible way to enter step by step. He was afraid that he would be exposed. Even at this point, he still had the fearlessness to sacrifice himself. But Xiao Ju's words had destroyed his defenses. He had known from the beginning. So everything he did was like a clown. He was led by the nose, but he was still pleased with himself. So what? Lei Ho forced himself to say, since I'm going to die anyway, I might as well die with some value. Even if it adds a thorn in your heart, it's fine. When I chose you to enter the vanguard, you did something. Xiao Ju casually waved his hand. Fei Nu bent down and took out something from his bosom. He handed it to Xiao Ju. It was a fragrant sachet and a longevity lock. Xiao Ju threw the fragrant sachet in front of Lei Ho. He twirled the longevity lock around his finger and looked at Lei Ho with a smile that was not a smile. Look, do you recognize it? Lei Ho felt as if he had been struck by lightning. The embroidery on the fragrant sachet was very familiar. It was the work of his wife. Lei Ho had personally ordered a craftsman to make the longevity lock for his son to wear. Xiao Huaijin, he gritted his teeth and said, you shouldn't implicate your wife and children. Wife and children? Xiao Ju played with the longevity lock in his hand and mocked. When you came to do this, did you still remember that you had a wife and children? Lei Ho gritted his teeth and didn't speak. By doing this, you are tying the lives of your wife and children to your body. If you succeed, you will live together. If you fail, why do you think that you will be the only one who will pay the price? Xiao Huaijin. Lei Ho shouted. He wanted to struggle, but he was restrained by the wooden shackles and couldn't do anything. At this moment, his eyes were red and he shouted, what are you trying to do? The young governor looked at him and revealed a mocking smile. You can tell me everything you know. Impossible. Lei Ho said. What a loyal dog. Xiao Ju placed the longevity lock in front of his eyes and observed it carefully. He said indifferently, take a guess. If you die and your wife and children die, do you think the master you serve will avenge you? I was the only one who did it. Lei Ho begged desperately, they don't know anything. Please let them go. Please let them go. It doesn't matter how you want to punish me. It doesn't matter even if you kill me. Before you came, you should have thought about the consequences. Xiao Ju said, as a death warrior, how can you rely on luck? Or, you should have hidden them deeper. Lei Ho fell to the ground. De Wei's young killer had a heart as hard as iron. No matter how much he begged, it was impossible for him to soften his heart. He was an emotionless monster. He was cruel and merciless, like a clay sculpture. If he treated his mother and father like this, how could he be expected to have feelings? What do you want? He asked weakly. But he knew that he couldn't be as cruel as Xiao Ju. He couldn't ignore the lives of his wife and children. But if he told him, his master would also take revenge. This was a path of no return. If he succeeded, he would live. If he failed, he would die. At this moment, Lei Ho regretted it. I said, tell me everything you know. Xiao Ju said slowly, I have a lot of time. Don't worry. You can tell me everything one by one. What if I don't tell you? The young man stopped fiddling with the longevity lock. In the next moment, the longevity lock in his hand broke into pieces with a slight creak. He actually crushed the longevity lock with his bare hands. You can try. His tone was calm, even gentle. He said, I promise the next time I send you, it won't just be these two dead objects. Lei Ho closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his expression was one of misery. He looked at Xiao Ju and sneered, as expected of General Fengyan, as expected of the Right Army's commander-in-chief. I, Lei Ho, have experienced your temperament and methods. He Yan was walking to and from the dungeon with Lin Shuanghe. When he reached the door, he heard this sentence. No wonder Xiao Zhongwu and his wife fought for military power before the 7th day of their death. No wonder they didn't even bat an eyelid when 60,000 people were drowned in the Battle of Gu City. In terms of ruthlessness, who in De Wei can compare to Xiao Huaijin? Chapter 116. No wonder Xiao Zhongwu and his wife fought for military power before the 7th day of their death. No wonder they didn't even bat an eyelid when 60,000 people were drowned in the Battle of Gu Valley. In terms of ruthlessness, who in the way can compare to Xiao Huaijin? The dungeon was silent for a moment. Shen Han wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't say anything. The young man's back was facing the prisoner, and his hands slowly clenched into fists by his side. But after a moment, they slowly relaxed. He turned around and looked at Lei Ho. He smiled indifferently and said, "It seems that you know what kind of person I am. Then you should think about it more clearly." He walked out, his voice cold. "I never give people a second chance." When he reached the door, he happened to see He Yen and Lin Shuanghe standing in the corner. He paused for a moment, then ignored them and left. No one dared to chase after him. Shen Han ordered people to lock Lei Ho back in. It was unknown whether it was the conversation with Xiao Ju that made Lei Ho despair or something else, but Lei Ho laughed bitterly. His laughter echoed in the dungeon, eerie and mournful. Fei Nu walked out. When he saw He Yen and Lin Shuanghe, he was startled and said, "Young Master Lin, why are you here?" "I wanted to say," He Yen looked inside, "I have fought with Lei Ho before. When the governor interrogates Lei Ho, I might be able to help, so I came to take a look." "No need, it's already been solved," Fei Nu replied quickly. "You can go back now." Lin Shuanghe shrugged. When he saw Xiao Ju's cloak in Fei Nu's hands, he took the initiative to take it and said, "This is Huaijin's clothes. I'll send it to him. I don't think he wants to see anyone right now." Fei Nu said, "No need to trouble young Master Lin." "It's no trouble at all." Lin Shuanghe said, "I was just about to look for him later." Fei Nu stopped and nodded to Lin Shuanghe. "Thank you, young Master Lin." Lin Shuanghe smiled and said to He Yen, "Let's go." The two of them walked out together. When they came out, it was already snowing lightly. Now, the snow was even heavier. He Yen was injured, so he walked very slowly. He was still wearing Cheng Lisu's cloak. Although Lin Shuanghe called He Yen little sister, intimately, he had a sense of propriety when it came to interacting with women. It was as if he was deliberately avoiding arousing suspicion. He didn't even lend his arm to help him up. However, the two of them were not in a hurry, so they walked very slowly. The snowflakes rustled down and hit them. He Yen thought about what Lei Ho had said in the dungeon. While he was deep in thought, Lin Shuanghe suddenly asked, "Have you heard of the Battle of Guicity's Long Valley?" He Yen was startled, but he immediately replied, "I have." The Battle of Guicity's Long Valley was the most important battle when Xiao Ju led the Nanfu army to quell the chaos of the southern barbarians after Xiao Zhongwu's death. At that time, everyone in Dawei was waiting to see Xiao Ju make a fool of himself. A 16-year-old boy leading so many soldiers against a foreign army that even his father couldn't defeat. No matter how they looked at it, he was bound to lose. Who would have thought that he would win the first battle? Later on, the southern barbarians were forced to retreat. Xiao Ju only took half a year to quell the chaos of the southern barbarians. Do you know how he won the Battle of the Long Valley? Water attack. You know? He Yen didn't say anything. Instead, he poked a small hole in the snow with his bamboo stick. Then you also know that during the Battle of the Long Valley, General Feng Yun and Xiao Huaijin flooded Guicity and 60,000 people died. Lin Shuanghe hugged Xiao Ju's black cloak tighter. At that time, corpses were floating in the air, and the east of the city stank. Guicity was like hell on earth. It was unbearable. He smiled and asked, "What do you think? Do you think he's cruel and inhumane?" He Yen said calmly, "War is cruel. Being kind to the enemy is being cruel to the people of your own country. Moreover, no one knows the truth before being in that position. If he wasn't cruel and inhumane, we might be the ones drowning now." Lin Shuanghe paused and turned to He Yen. "Why do you think so?" "I just think that military governor Xiao isn't that kind of person." Lin Shuanghe stared at He Yen as if it was the first time he had seen her. He Yen asked, "Is there anything wrong with what I said?" After a while, he shook his head and smiled. "I'm just surprised that you trusted Huaijin so much after spending less than a year with him. Why was I not as firm as you when I first heard about this?" He Yen thought that it was because Lin Shuanghe had never been to a real battlefield. Only those who had seen fighting on the battlefield would know how difficult it was for a general to make a decision. Xiao Ju was smart and calm. If he didn't have a reason to do so, he wouldn't have done so. Instead, he would have left a bad name for himself. After the Battle of the Long Valley, although Xiao Ju defeated the southern barbarians and was respected by many young people, he was also criticized by many scholars for being heartless and killing too many people. After all, there were also southern barbarians among the people who drowned in the Battle of the Long Valley. Dr. Lin, you seem to know why he did this. He Yan asked, why? I didn't know it from the start. Lin Shuanghe sighed. Tell me, what other way would he use 3,000 soldiers to fight 60,000 people other than a water attack? 3,000 soldiers? He Yan suddenly looked up. Isn't it 100,000 Southern House soldiers? 100,000. Lin Shuanghe smiled. If he had 100,000 Southern House soldiers, he wouldn't have to use this method. When Xiao Zhongwu died, Madame Xiao followed him. For a time, the Xiao mansion was filled with cries and sorrowful cries. At that time, everyone knew that Xiao Zhongwu's defeat at the Battle of the Ming River was because he was stubborn and self-opinionated. He made mistakes in his command and caused tens of thousands of Dawei soldiers to die on the battlefield. His Majesty was merciful. He remembered Xiao family's many years of contributions and did not pursue Xiao Zhongwu's fault. At the same time, he took back military power. At that time, Xiao Ju was only 16 years old and Xiao Jing had just turned 18. Bai Rongwei had married into the family for less than half a year before this disaster happened. For a time, everyone was in a state of panic and did not know what to do in the future. Lin Shuanghe still remembered the first time he saw Xiao Ju after the Xiao family's disaster. The young man was used to having a cold and lazy appearance, as if nothing was on his mind. But he also taught people that there was nothing in the world that could stop him. It was just that if anyone's family suffered such a disaster, they would not be able to recover from it. Even if they were not able to recover, they would still be very different from before. But the Xiao Ju that Lin Shuanghe saw was not like that. Other than looking a little more haggard than before, he did not look dispirited or depressed. Do you have medicine that makes people sleep for a whole day? Xiao Ju asked. Lin Shuanghe said, my family's medicine shop has it. If you want it, I can get it for you immediately. The Lin family's medicine shops were all over the Dawei. Just in the downtown area of Shuojing, there were a few shops. Lin Shuanghe ordered a servant to go to the nearest medicine shop and get 2 sets of medicine. He handed them to Xiao Ju and said, take it and you will sleep for 20 hours. He suddenly thought of something and said, if you can't sleep at night, I can make a milder medicine for you. Perhaps Xiao Ju was unable to sleep because of the sudden disaster in his family and wanted to ask for medicine to help him sleep. Xiao Ju put the medicine back into his sleeve and waved his hand at him, saying, thank you. He turned and was about to leave. Why Jin? Lin Shuanghe called out to him. Xiao Ju stopped and looked at him. This medicine is for you, right? The young man's eyes were exquisite and bright. He looked past him and into the distance. At the end of the distance, the lofty palace was faintly discernible. He said calmly, I want to enter the palace. Lin Shuanghe was not stupid. He immediately understood Xiao Ju's intention. He said in horror, you want to enter the palace without telling your brother? Why would I tell him? The young man lowered his head and smiled. It will only make him more worried. You're crazy. Lin Shuanghe said anxiously, do you know that the court is in chaos because of General Xiao? No one dares to speak for General Xiao. Prime Minister Su has been accompanying His Majesty every day. Do you know why? I know. Xiao Ju said, so what? The military power must be returned to the Xiao family. You might lose your life if you do this. Xiao Ju turned his head and stared at him, then I will lose my life. That's right, there's something I need your help with. He said. The young man's face rarely showed such a serious expression. Lin Shuanghe's heart was filled with an ominous premonition. He pursed his lips and asked, what is it? If I come back alive, then pretend that this never happened. If I die, he paused, there's no need to collect my corpse. Imperial physician Lin has some influence in front of the Empress Dowager. Please help my brother. This has nothing to do with him. What do you mean, you die? Lin Shuanghe heard his own trembling voice. It's very simple. After tonight, if I don't die today, then he will die tomorrow. His expression was calm, as if he was talking about someone else. But I'm not sure of the result. So, he curved his lips, you can pray. Xiao Huaijin. The young man bowed deeply to him. When he straightened up, he only said 2 words. Thank you. Lin Shuanghe's eyes reddened. Xiao Ju waved his hand at him, go back. Lin Shuanghe didn't move. He laughed and turned to leave. That was a long time ago, but Xiao Ju's back seemed to stop in front of him. On the bustling streets of the city, the young man's back was tall and straight, but he looked especially lonely. No one knew what kind of path he would take, but Lin Shuanghe was very clear about one thing. Xiao Ju wouldn't turn back. He Yan's words interrupted him while he was deep in thought. He Yan asked, so later, the governor entered the palace by himself? Lin Shuanghe came back to his senses and continued to walk forward slowly. As he walked, he said, I didn't follow him into the palace. I heard about what happened later from my grandfather. That night, it began to rain. The autumn rain was cold, as if it wanted to soak into people's hearts. In a few days it would be the Mid-Autumn Festival. If nothing had happened to Xiao Zhongwu, the Xiao family would be busy preparing for the Mid-Autumn Festival banquet. But now, it was bleak and mourning was everywhere. The 3 people at the table were silent. No one wanted to touch the food. Bai Rongwei said warmly, eat a little. If you continue like this, your body won't be able to take it. It was all simple porridge and side dishes. After a moment of silence, Xiao Jing picked up the bowl. He took a sip and put it down. Huaijin, tomorrow morning, I will go to the palace with you. Xiao Ju, okay. Bai Rongwei asked, go to the palace, for what? Xiao family has lost their military power. Sooner or later, they will become meat on the chopping board, at the mercy of others. Xiao Jing said, no matter what, the South Mansion soldiers must be returned to the Xiao family. Otherwise, the Xiao family didn't know how long it would last. Then, even if His Majesty returns the military power to us, what will we do in the future? Bai Rongwei said carefully, Ruby, you are the imperial physician. Even if Huaijin joined the military, he is only 16 years old. Xiao Jing's movement stopped. He had to admit that there was no one in the Xiao family. Even if Xiao Ju was talented, he was only 16 years old. He was still a child. How could he lead tens of thousands of soldiers? It would be difficult to convince the public. There are many things a 16-year-old can do. Xiao Ju carelessly picked up food. Big brother, if you are afraid of everything, you will achieve nothing. Xiao Jing sighed. Forget it. Let's take one step at a time. Now, there is no other way. Will His Majesty return the military power to us? Bai Rongwei said worriedly, now that Prime Minister Su's power is overwhelming, he will not let go of this opportunity to deal with the Xiao family. He will. The youth lazily poured tea for them, don't be afraid. Su Jingfu is only a mortal. No one spoke again. The night rain continued to fall. The servants helped Bai Rongwei and Xiao Jing back to their beds. Xiao Ju stood up, put on his outer clothes and walked out the door. Outside, Fei Nu was waiting. The rain fell on the ground, creating puddles and ripples. The white lanterns hanging at the door were completely soaked. Xiao Ju stopped at the door. Fei Nu said, young master. He bowed his head and ordered the housekeeper, take care of them. Let's go. They disappeared into the night. The carriage drove to the palace. In the palace, the current Prime Minister Su Jingfu was playing chess with the Emperor Wenxuan. A servant came to report, Your Majesty, the second son of General Guangwu's residence requests an audience. Emperor Wenxuan stopped playing chess. Xiao Huaijin? What is he doing here? Probably because of his father. Su Jingfu laughed. Your Majesty, be careful. He picked up a black stone. You, don't play tricks while I'm distracted. Emperor Wenxuan laughed and scolded, sly. Su Jingfu also laughed. Your Majesty is letting me win. The two of them continued to chat and play chess. They seemed to have forgotten about Xiao Ju. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, the servant came in again to remind, Your Majesty, second son Xiao is still waiting outside the palace. It's still raining outside. If it's raining, then go back. Emperor Wenxuan was worried about the chess game in front of him. What's he waiting for? Your Majesty, please don't be angry. Su Jingfu said, second son Zhao's family has undergone a great change. He's still a child. He must be feeling wronged. Why don't you let me go out and persuade him? It's best if I can persuade him to go back. Go! Emperor Wenxuan waved his hand impatiently. Attending court is Xiao Zhongwu's business, but he can't leave court. Xiao family, I'm tired of hearing it. Let him go back. Go quickly and come back quickly. When you come back, you still have to play this game with me. Su Jingfu stood up and bowed respectfully. Yes. When he walked out of the palace, he saw Xiao Ju kneeling at the door. Su Jingfu was over 60 years old. When he was young, he worked in the Hanlin Academy and had students all over the world. Dewey's outstanding young man was more or less related to him. Even though Xiao Ju was not his student, he had heard of Xiao Ju's outstanding performance. He had seen Xiao Ju once during the imperial hunt. He also remembered that the white-robed young man's beauty was captivating. He was like a dazzling pearl, and everyone else paled in comparison. Su Jingfu had also sighed in his heart. It would be great if such an outstanding young man was part of the Su family. Unfortunately, Xiao Zhongwu, that barbarian, took advantage of him. He stood in front of Xiao Ju and said, second son Xiao. The young man raised his head and looked at him. Official Su. It's raining so heavily outside. Why is second son Xiao waiting outside without an umbrella? He ordered the left and right palace servants, come, bring second son Xiao an umbrella. The palace servants held umbrellas and stood behind Xiao Ju. Su Jingfu made a gesture to help him up, as if he was an elder concerned about the younger generation. He said, why are you still kneeling? Hurry and get up. Xiao Ju did not move and said, I want to see His Majesty. His Majesty is busy right now. If second son Xiao really has something to say, you can come back tomorrow. It's already very late. His Majesty still needs to rest after finishing his work. It's not a good time to see His Majesty. The young man did not move and only repeated, Official Su, I must see His Majesty today. Su Jingfu took 2 steps back and looked at him with his hands in his sleeves. He also had a benevolent smile on his face. Second son Xiao, His Majesty is benevolent. Xiao family used to do meritorious deeds and favored you greatly. Now that your father failed in his duty and caused the Dewey soldiers to suffer a crushing defeat at the Battle of Mingshui, he should have pursued this matter. It was His Majesty who gave him a way out on account of their past relationship. How can you be so insatiable and not know what's good for you? The night rain drifted in from below the umbrella and soaked the young man's clothes. His eyebrows were extremely handsome and his expression was calm. His voice was no longer lazy and dissolute as he said, Official Su is right. Su Jingfu's smile did not change. So, Xiao Ju raised his head and looked at him, I implore Official Su to make an exception for His Majesty. Xiao Ju wishes to see His Majesty. Second son Xiao must be joking. Why should I make an exception for His Majesty? Su Jingfu asked. The young man looked at him and lowered his head slightly. Please grant my wish, Official Su. A young man's pride was the most fragile. Sometimes, his spine would bend slightly and he would not be able to stand up again. If Xiao Zhongwu knew in the underworld and saw his second son, whom he was so proud of, kneeling in front of him and begging for his mercy, what kind of expression would he have? In an instant, Su Jingfu did not want to immediately force him into a dead end. It was much more interesting to see a proud person fall into the mortal world, be trampled into the mud, and have his pride trampled until it was worthless. He raised his head slightly and said in distress, Second son Xiao, it's not that I don't want to help you. It's just that His Majesty is angry at the Xiao family right now. Even I can't interfere in this matter. Xiao Ju only said, Please grant my wish, Official Su. Su Jingfu stared at him. After a while, he said, If second son Xiao insists on seeing His Majesty, why don't you accept your punishment first? Xiao family is already guilty. If second son Xiao is willing to go all out and His Majesty sees it, the anger in His Majesty's heart may dissipate a little. This old man will also speak up for second son Xiao. Please advise me, Official Su. You're still young and it's difficult for you to bear more punishment. Go and receive 50 paddles first. He said. These words were said very casually, as if Xiao Ju was already very lenient. The palace servant next to him lowered his head and did not speak, but he could not hide the surprise in his heart. 50 paddles, if one's body was weak, would be enough to kill. Even if it was an ordinary person, 50 paddles would take half their life. It would be difficult for them to recover without recuperating for at least a year. Xiao Ju said, "Okay." Su Jingfu smiled. Second son Xiao is indeed like his father. He turned and ordered his servants, "Take second son Xiao away to receive his paddles." In the night rain, 50 paddles fell on a person. It was not as easy as imagined, especially the palace servant who carried out the punishment. Su Jingfu had specially instructed him. The youth did not make a sound. He gritted his teeth and endured it. After 50 paddles, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and slowly propped himself up to stand up. When he stood up, his footsteps were a bit weak and he almost fell. The palace servant next to him could not bear to see him like this. Back then, second son Xiao was dressed in brocade and fox fur. He was elegant and gorgeous. Who would have expected him to be in such a sorry state? No one would have expected this. Su Jingfu was not interested in watching Xiao Ju receive his paddles. He entered the hall and first went to speak with Emperor Wenxuan. Emperor Wenxuan said, "Didn't you say you wanted to chase him away?" "Your Majesty," Su Jingfu shook his head, "second son Xiao insisted on seeing your Majesty." This old official could not persuade him otherwise. Young people are full of vigor. If they really want to do something, even 9 bulls cannot pull them back. Now that General Guangwu is no longer here, and his mother, this old official also feels sorry for him. "Your Majesty, why don't you see him and hear what he has to say? If he doesn't speak well, ask him to leave. Next time, we won't meet again." Emperor Wenxuan sighed. "My dear official, your heart has softened. It is your Majesty's kindness." "Forget it," Emperor Wenxuan ordered the palace servant. "In any case, I have watched him grow up. Ask him to come in." The outside of the hall was extremely cold, but the inside of the hall was extremely warm. There was no place to hide from the night rain. There was only the fragrance of flowers that made people dizzy. The lights were bright, and someone walked in. He knelt down in front of Emperor Wenxuan and said, "This official kowtows in salute to your Majesty." "No need for formalities," Emperor Wenxuan said casually. He raised his eyes to look at Xiao Ju. When he saw Xiao Ju, he was stunned and asked, "How did you become like this?" It had been raining outside. The umbrella that Su Jingfu asked the servant to hold up only lasted for less than 15 minutes. His entire body was wet and he looked extremely miserable. Because he had just been hit 50 times, his body was extremely weak. His face was pale and his lips were pale. It seemed like he would faint at any moment. He was completely different from before. After all, he had watched him grow up. Emperor Wenxuan couldn't help but feel compassion for him. He was genuinely concerned. He softened his tone and said, "Tell me, did someone bully you?" Su Jingfu stood at the side and answered, "Second young Master Xiao knows that the Xiao family is guilty. He took the 50 strikes to make himself feel better. He also wants your Majesty to know that the Xiao family is remorseful." Emperor Wenxuan looked at him and sighed, 50 strikes is too much. "Second young Master Xiao is also grateful for your Majesty's kindness," Su Jingfu said with a smile. "Why did you come to find me?" Emperor Wenxuan said, "I don't want to talk about the Xiao family anymore." Xiao Ju's gaze swept across the chessboard on the table. On the chessboard, the black and white pieces intertwined. Under the warm light, it was gloomy and cold. Just like how life was strange, no one could predict what would happen in the future. But the past was the past. Since it was impossible to predict, the future could only be created. The young man prostrated himself. His voice was calm, but with an unstoppable stubbornness, He said word by word. This official begs for your majesty's permission. I am willing to personally lead the southern army into Mingshui and fight against the southern barbarians. Chapter 117. Your Majesty, please allow me to personally lead the Nanfu army into Mingshui and fight against the southern barbarians. The light flickered, and the sound of rain hitting the ground could be heard. The young man bowed. After a while, Emperor Wenshuan said slowly, "Do you know what you are saying? The southern barbarians bullied the people of the Central Plains. Now that my father is dead, I am willing to carry on my father's legacy and enter the southern barbarians again to take back Mingshui." Emperor Wenshuan did not speak, but Su Jingfu spoke first. He said, "Second young Master Xiao, although I can understand your grief and anger at the passing of General Guangwu, leading the army into battle is not something that can be done with just a few words." Seeing that Emperor Wenshuan did not intend to stop him from speaking, Su Jingfu continued, "In the Battle of Mingshui, General Guangwu was obstinate and self-opinionated. He caused thousands of Dawei soldiers to die at Mingshui. Your Majesty is benevolent and did not pursue the matter. Now that you are here tonight, it is not to ask for forgiveness, but for military power." Xiao Ju said in a low voice, "I am doing this for the people of Dawei." "The people of Dawei?" Su Jingfu shook his head. Second young Master Xiao is only 16 years old and has never been on the battlefield before. There are many generals in Dawei that do not dare to lead the army into battle. You are just a little kid, don't be too arrogant. Go back. Emperor Wenshuan said, "Do not mention this again." The young man paused and looked at Emperor Wenshuan. "I am willing to make a military pledge. If I am defeated, I am willing to accept any punishment." Every word was powerful and resonant. Xiao family's second young Master Zhao's eyes had always been beautiful. They were as clear as the autumn water, but they always had a hint of laziness. Now, the laziness in his eyes had disappeared. It was as if something had sunk down, and something had gradually floated up. It made people feel as if they were burning. It was hard to ignore. "A military pledge is easy," Su Jingfu said, "but second young Master Xiao, if you are defeated, it is just a life. To others, war is not a child's play. Because of General Guangwu's defeat at Mingshui, Great Wei's vitality has been greatly damaged. Now, because of your words, you want to use the tens of thousands of Nanfu soldiers as a wager?" He stroked his beard, shaking his head and sighing, "Great Wei cannot afford to lose." Xiao Ju was silent for a moment. "I wouldn't dare." Su Jingfu's eyes. "Xiao Ju of the southern barbarians invaded my land. And my father died. I do not want to live. I hope your Majesty allow me to lead the army to lead the army." Without seeing the news of victory, this subject does not dare to speak rashly. However many soldiers your Majesty is willing to give this subject will take that many. Even if I die on the battlefield, this subject will have no regrets. His attitude was stubborn, and he had the determination to stake everything on one throw. It seemed that as long as Wenshuandi did not agree, he would kneel here and never get up. Emperor Wenshuan rubbed his temples. "I do not want to talk about this again. Your Majesty is benevolent." The young man's voice did not back down. "Your Majesty," Su Jingfu spoke. "Second young Master Xiao is determined to go to the southern barbarians to fight. He has a pure heart." Emperor Wenshuan looked at him. "What, you want to speak for him?" Su Jingfu hurriedly said, "I do not dare. It is just that. Second young Master Xiao is so confident in himself. Maybe there will be a miracle. It's just that the Great Wei does not dare to gamble with tens of thousands of southern prefecture soldiers. So what?" Emperor Wenshuan asked. 3,000. Xiao Ju raised his head. There were hundreds of thousands of southern barbarians. 3,000 against 100,000. No one would accept this proposal. This was a war they would lose. Emperor Wenshuan took a sip of tea. He understood. Su Jingfu made this request on the surface to make Xiao Ju back down. Bringing 3,000 soldiers to fight the southern barbarians was not forcing him. It was a fool's dream. As long as Xiao Ju did not want to die, he would not agree. He put down the teacup in his hand and looked at the stubborn young man. Xiao Huijin, if you insist on going, I will only give you 3,000 soldiers. Are you still willing to go? Su Jingfu hid his hands in his sleeves and watched from the sidelines. He would not agree. The young man slowly lowered his head and kowtowed to Emperor Wenxuan. This subject thanks your majesty for your grace. Everyone in the hall was stunned. When Xiao Ju raised his eyes again, his expression was calm. A monarch does not joke. 3,000 it is. The heavy snow pressed down on the bare branches, and with a crack, the branches broke. Lin Shuanghe was in a daze. It had been a long time since he found out that Xiao Ju had brought 3,000 soldiers to Mingshui. It had been so long that the Battle of Guacity and the scholars had cursed Xiao Ju behind his back. It had been so long that Xiao Huijin had become Dawei's god of war, General Feng'en. It had been so long that the two of them had not seen each other for 2 years. The affairs of the world were unpredictable and there were many different opinions. However, no one knew how the young man felt when he left the city with 3,000 soldiers and found out that he was facing an army of 100,000. Xiao Ruby did not know that Xiao Ju had drugged him and entered the palace in the middle of the night to ask for 3,000 soldiers. He thought that the emperor had handed the southern barbarians to Xiao Ju and that Xiao Ju had temporary military power. Everyone cursed Xiao Ju behind his back. They cursed him for fighting for power. They cursed him for entering the palace before the 7th day of his mother's death. They cursed him for deceiving the emperor and handing the southern barbarians to a young man. How ridiculous was that? Who was the one who was being ridiculous? How ridiculous was this world? Xiao Ju left the city in the middle of the night. No one knew the look in his eyes before he left, and no one knew what he was thinking. Countless interesting things happened in the capital every day. Some people sighed at the Xiao family's misfortune, while others took pleasure in it. However, it only lasted for a few days. After a month, there were very few people who mentioned it. After a few more months, it had long been forgotten by people. Until the news of the Battle of Long Valley came. Second young master Xiao had led the southern barbarians to take down Guacity and drown 60,000 southern barbarians. The whole nation was shocked. They were shocked by the young man's surprise attack and how ruthless he was at such a young age. Everyone thought that he could have used a gentler method to capture the captives. Who knew that there were civilians among the 60,000 who drowned? But what could they do? 3,000 against 100,000. He Yen rubbed a small bump on the bamboo stick and pressed it gently. His hand hurt. He has no other choice. Lin Shuanghe smiled. That's right. No one would use such a method unless they were forced into a dead end. The southern barbarians were stationed in Guacity. Xiao Zhongwu had been attacking for a long time, but he couldn't defeat them. Now that he had 3,000 soldiers, it was even more impossible for him to fight them head-on. Xiao Ju ordered the 3,000 soldiers to secretly build a dam 100 miles east of Guacity to block the water from the East Mountain Long Valley. When the water accumulated and turned into a vast ocean, he ordered the dam to be breached. Fei Nu asked, "Young master, you must think carefully. If this goes on, everyone will curse you behind your back. Even if they won by drowning Guacity, it would leave a cruel mark in the history books." All the generals and soldiers had always wanted to be remembered in history and be famous for 1,000 years. Moreover, the emperor advocated benevolence and didn't like to kill indiscriminately. This kind of victory meant that they had to bear more than they could gain. The young man sat under a tree and looked in the direction of Guacity in the distance. He stroked a weed in front of him and said self-mockingly, "Do I have any other choice?" Fei Nu didn't speak. "It doesn't matter what others say about me." He stood up, his black cloak leaving a trail behind him. "Open the dam." Fei Nu didn't speak or move. The young man walked forward and said coldly, "I said, open the dam." Thousands of feet of water flowed down. Guacity was submerged. The water poured in from the east and came out from the west. The barbarian soldiers and civilians in the south couldn't escape. All 60,000 people drowned. The city fell, and Xiao Ju won without a fight. When the news reached the imperial court, Emperor Wenchuan was also shocked. After Xiao Zhongwu's death, the officials who supported the Xiao family were suppressed by Prime Minister Su's party. Now that Xiao Ju had won, they could hold their heads up high. Xiao Ju took the opportunity to submit a letter asking Emperor Wenchuan to hand over the Southern House soldiers to him so that he could wipe out the southern barbarians in one go. Emperor Wenchuan delegated power bit by bit. Xiao Ju's victories were also won one battle after another. In the past few years, the southern barbarians had been defeated by him again and again. In the end, they were utterly defeated. The young man who led 3,000 people out of the city alone at night had finally become the frightening General Feng Yun in the eyes of the world. No one cared about the truth anymore. What people cared about was the fact that he had been greedy for military exploits, treated human lives like grass, and slaughtered at will. What he cared about was that he was arrogant, domineering, and looked down on everyone else. He even chopped down the only son of the Minister of Revenue without any mercy. But was he willing to be like this? When they were young, they went to school together in the Xianchang school and read, "The young man has his own arrogance. He despises the Kunlun sect and laughs at Lu Liang. He sharpened his sword for many years and showed his edge today." How spirited and handsome he was. In the years that followed, he was no longer as bright as he was then. The handsome young man in a white robe and a silver crown became the jade-faced killing general in black clothes and black armor. This was not something to be celebrated. From the beginning to the end, he was just one person. The snow fell even harder. It was so heavy that just by standing on the spot, one could already feel the chill. Their feet would leave clear footprints on the snow, but it wouldn't be long before they would be covered by the snow, leaving no traces behind. I don't know. At that time, the governor only led 3,000 people in the Battle of Gua City, He Yan said. Do you know how the 9 Flags Battalion came to be? Lin Shuanghe asked. He Yan shook his head. His Majesty asked the Xiao Ju to pick 3,000 people from the South Mansion Army. This was his last mercy to Huaijin. Huaijin stood in front of the South Mansion Army and asked them to choose whether they were willing to follow him to Mingshui. Before they went, no one thought that they would win the battle. They were going to die. Everyone who stood out had the determination to die and followed the general's son. The first 800 people who stood out later became the 9 Flags Battalion, he said with a smile. No wonder. He Yan understood why the Xiao Ju did not easily accept people into the 9 Flags Battalion. No matter how outstanding, brave, smart, and capable they were, they could not compare to the friendship they had built up in the past. Even if they were injured in the 9 Flags Battalion and could not go to the battlefield again, the Xiao Ju would help them settle down. Because it was worth it. I didn't know about this at that time. Lin Shuanghe reached out and brushed away a snowflake that had landed on his body. Later, when grandfather was treating the Empress Dowager told him about it. Grandfather then told me that there were many rumors in the imperial court. After piecing them together, we formed the original outline of the situation. Didn't military governor Xiao tell you about this? Tian asked. She remembered that when she entered the Xianchang school, Xiao Ju, Lin Shuanghe, and another young man were very close. When Xiao Ju was in trouble, he would tell his friend about it. To be honest, I only met him a few times in the past few years. Lin Shuanghe shook his head. The few times he wrote to me, he wanted to borrow money. Borrow money? You didn't expect that, right? When Lin Shuanghe said this, his tone became more relaxed. Xiao family's original silver was confiscated when General Guangwu was killed. When he led the troops to the south 2 years ago, he didn't have enough resources. Xiao family's eldest brother was an honest official. He couldn't bear to squeeze his brother dry, so he came to me. Our Lin family's medicine shops are all over the Dawei. We are loved by many noble ladies in the capital. He treated me as his father and gave him pocket money. He Yan, even though he won many battles these years and got a lot of rewards and spoils of war, it's still not enough compared to what I borrowed from him. Lin Shuanghe smiled. Of course, I'm very generous. If he can't pay me back, then forget it. He Yan, it's good to have a friend like you. These words were said with sincerity. Lin Shuanghe waved his hand modestly. You're too kind. That's why I was surprised when Xiao Ju sent me a letter asking me to come to Liangzhou. Did the governor ask Dr. Lin to come to Liangzhou? He Yan asked curiously. That's right. The letter said that one of his confidants had an eye injury and asked me to come and treat it. I thought it was Fei Nu Chi Wu who was injured. Halfway there was a letter saying that the person's eye had recovered. Since I couldn't turn back halfway, I heard that he was in Qingnan. So I changed my route and went there to meet him. I also followed him to the Liangzhou guard to see where he lives now. He Yan was surprised. Xiao Ju's letter said, confidant with an eye injury. It must be her. She had been injured by the assassin at Sun Xiangfu's banquet. However, she quickly realized that it wasn't serious. At that time, she didn't know that Xiao Ju had already asked Lin Shuanghe to come and treat her. Although Lin Shuanghe only looked at women, he was Lin Qingtan's grandson. His medical skills were superb and no one dared to look down on him. This person wasn't as heartless as he made himself out to be. As the two of them talked, they had already arrived at He Yan's door. Here. Lin Shuanghe handed He Yan a robe. You can give this to him. He Yan. Why me? Lin Shuanghe thought for a moment. Because Xiao Huaijin must be in a bad mood right now. If I go and join in the fun, I'll be scolded. But you're different. He leaned closer to He Yan and whispered, if a cute and obedient girl goes, he'll control his temper and won't make things difficult for you. He Yan's lips twitched. Dr. Lin, do you think military Governor Xiao is the kind of person who'll have tender feelings for the fairer sex? Moreover, in Xiao Ju's mind, she wasn't cute and obedient at all. Of course, why wouldn't he be? Lin Shuanghe looked at her with a smile and gently pushed her into the room. He didn't chase you out of the Liangzhou guards immediately after discovering your identity. This proves that he treats you well. Go, be careful. Don't fall. He Yan, wait. I'll come see you tomorrow. He Yan was pushed into his room. The door was closed behind him, and the room was empty. The food that Cheng Lisu and Song Taodao had brought over was still by the bed. He Yan walked over with the support of a stick and sat down on the bed. The black robe was next to his hand. He Yan looked at the other side of the door. He wondered if Xiao Ju was there right now. If she was, wouldn't it be a bit awkward for her to just give him the food? The window was open, and the salt-like snow drifted into the room with the wind. The young governor stood in front of the window and looked at the wind and snow outside. In the dungeon, Lei Ho's words rang in his ears. The snow grew heavier and heavier, almost blinding his eyes. The light in his eyes gradually dimmed. When he was young, he had learned martial arts from a master in the mountains. Before he left the mountains, the master had said to him, "You will walk on a very difficult path. You must walk on alone and never look back." He was young then and didn't understand what this meant. It wasn't until the huge waves of fate came crashing down and overturned the boat that carried the youth's hopes. As he floated alone in the sea, he suddenly understood. So that's how it was. Xiao Zhongwu only had 2 sons. Xiao Jing was like a flawless white jade, pure and noble. How could he participate in this kind of thing? If one of them had to walk on this path and bear the burden of murder, misunderstanding, infamy, and loneliness, why not let him do it? He didn't care. So many years had passed. He didn't care about misunderstandings, nor was he afraid of being questioned. How could he lose something he had never owned? But this kind of snowy day was too cold. Creak, a sound came from behind him. Xiao Ju turned around and a head popped out from behind the door. He Yan struggled to walk in with a stick, holding his pajamas in his hands. "Sorry," the youth said sincerely, "I just knocked on the door, but you didn't respond, so I..." "Xiao Ju, so you picked the lock and came in uninvited?" He Yan said embarrassedly, "Don't be angry, we're all neighbors." She sneezed. "Achoo, why didn't you close the window? It's so cold." How could she say something like, "We're all neighbors," so calmly? Xiao Ju didn't bother to pay attention to her and closed the window. He Yan also felt wronged. She knocked on the door for a long time, but Xiao Ju ignored her. She thought that Xiao Ju wasn't home. She thought that it was good that she didn't bump into Xiao Ju when he was in a bad mood. She might as well use this opportunity to secretly pick the lock, sneak in, put down the pajamas and leave. She didn't have to think about how to comfort him when they met. But this person was in the house and he still ignored her. It was too disrespectful. "Commander-in-Chief, your pajamas." He Yen handed the pajamas to him. Xiao Ju looked at her. "Just put it on the couch." He Yen said, "Oh," and put it on the couch. She then sat down on a stool in the house. She saw that this person was still standing in the same place, thinking about something. She guessed that he was still upset about what Lei Ho said in the dungeon. She couldn't help but sympathize with him. During her years in the Fuyue army, she didn't know that Xiao Ju had such a difficult life. If it was her, then so be it. He Yen never felt that she was special, but if this kind of thing happened to Xiao Ju, then she felt that the heavens were too cruel. It turned out that God wasn't Xiao Ju's biological father. He had to take away what he had given her. He was even an unscrupulous businessman who never made a loss. She tried to find something to talk about. "Commander-in-Chief, I see that your pajamas are really beautiful. Where did you buy it? How much did it cost?" Xiao Ju said, "The palace gave it to me." He Yen, this person obviously didn't want to talk to her anymore. That was why he deliberately made it difficult for her to continue the conversation. He Yen hesitated whether to leave or not. She thought about the medicine that Xiao Ju gave her when she was injured and sighed in her heart. She was a person who would take revenge for revenge and repay kindness for kindness. Now that Xiao Ju was in a bad mood, it would be disloyal to her if she left just like that. "Commander-in-Chief, the wound on my waist hurts." He Yen changed the topic, trying to attract his attention to something else. "Will it leave any side effects in the future?" Hurts. Xiao Ju sat down in front of the table and said indifferently, "I see that you can get out of bed and walk around. It shouldn't be a big problem." "He Yen," she said, "Commander-in-Chief, you can't vent your dissatisfaction with Lei Ho on me." This person was like a firecracker now. She couldn't even talk properly. Xiao Ju flipped through the pages in front of him and said without turning his head, "You think too much." He Yen looked at him. It was probably the report sent by the Liangzhou guards about the attack on Raida Musi and the number of casualties. He sat in front of the table and carefully flipped through it. Xiao Ju didn't have it easy. He Yen thought to himself. He first went to Qingnan and rushed back with the Nanfu army. He led the army to destroy Raida Musi's soldiers and then helped the injured soldiers settle down. Then he went to interrogate Lei Ho. After that, he was scolded by Lei Ho. Now he came back to continue reading the military report. He didn't stop for a moment. He Yen was injured, but at least he had a good night's sleep. This person, on the other hand, didn't rest from beginning to end. But when he was in the Xianchang Hall, he liked to laze around. So even Xiao Ju couldn't avoid it? His back was always as straight as a tree, as if he would never get tired. But in fact, he would get tired. He Yen sat in the chair and looked at his back. He said, "Commander-in-Chief, don't take Lei Ho's words to heart." He Yen didn't hear Xiao Ju's reply, but he didn't care. He continued, "He's the enemy. Of course he's happy to see you angry. Those words were purposely said to anger you. You're not the only one who was scolded. He also scolded me. He called me a sissy." He Yen started to talk nonsense again. He also said that I have a hidden disease and that my fiancé will run away with someone sooner or later. I'm all alone and will end up in the east of the city with no one to buy tofu. This kind of consolation was really lame. After He Yen finished speaking, he felt that he didn't put in the effort. But what could she do? She was rarely comforted by others, so she didn't know how to comfort others. There was no right or wrong in some things. You had to make the right decision based on your position. Outsiders couldn't understand the feeling of shouldering everything alone. It wasn't a good feeling. She had experienced it before. So she could understand Xiao Ju's feelings. Xiao Ju still couldn't be bothered with him. Her eyes didn't move away from the military report in front of her. He Yen stood up, leaned on the staff, and walked to his side with difficulty. Her right hand clenched into a fist and landed on his desk. "I'll give you something," she said. "I'm leaving." She slowly dragged her feet back to her room and closed the door. After He Yen left, Xiao Ju stopped what she was doing and looked at the table. There was a sesame candy lying on the spot where her palm was just now. It looked very sweet. Chapter 118. After the incident with Rida Muzi, the Liangzhou guards were very busy for a period of time. After the new soldiers who died in battle were buried, their names were recorded in the military registry. When they returned to the capital in the future, they had to pay compensation to the families of the new soldiers. The new soldiers who died were all sentinels, and most of them were still very young. They had died in battle less than a year after coming to the Liangzhou guards. Their companions who spent all their time together were also very depressed for a period of time. However, even though they were depressed, their days still had to go on. Especially after this incident, the Liangzhou guards were not as safe as before. Xiao Ju ordered Chief Instructor Shin to begin training the new formations. If they really encountered an enemy, the new soldiers had to learn how to set up formations to be able to kill the enemy. Not all of the Nanfu soldiers had arrived in Liangzhou. When Xiao Ju rushed back from Qingnan, she brought 10,000 Nanfu soldiers with her. The Nine Flags Battalion remained in Qingnan and did not follow. Now that Liangzhou city had become the target of public criticism, it was not a good time to be in the limelight. The Nanfu soldiers' daily training was different from the Liangzhou guards' daily training. Just as Xiao Ju said, the length and amount of daily training was 3 times that of the Liangzhou guards. Every time the new soldiers of the Liangzhou guards saw the Nanfu soldiers' daily training, they couldn't help but sigh in admiration. In an instant, the originally empty training grounds became lively. At the foot of White Moon Mountain, by the Wulu River, there were soldiers everywhere. He Yan's injuries were also getting better day by day. Lin Shuanghe's medical skills were much more exquisite than Shen Mushue's. He originally thought that such an injury would take him a year or so to recover. Now, at this rate, He Yan felt that he could still go to the training grounds and jump around in 2 months. Song Taotao placed the soup in front of He Yan. After watching He Yan drink it all, she took the bowl and left. The little girl didn't know how to cook, so she went to the head of the soldiers and used her status as a young miss to rob them. The food she robbed was to feed He Yan. He Yan sometimes felt like he was living off a woman. At first, he was a bit embarrassed, but after a while, he became used to it. After all, the soup was delicious. It would be even better if the little girl didn't look at her as if she was looking at her own treasure. From the other side of the room, a faint voice could be heard. It seemed to be Liang Ping's, and he sounded a little excited. He Yan thought about it for a while, then got up and got out of bed with the help of a stick. She took out a silver thread from her sleeve and inserted it into the lock. She had done this kind of thing many times, so it was a walk in the park for her. Fortunately, Xiao Ju turned a blind eye to her behavior and did not change the lock to a more complicated, sure character. Xiao Ju's important documents were probably not in this room, which was why it was so loose. He Yan pushed open the door slightly and saw a person kneeling in front of Xiao Ju. It was Du Mao, whom he had not seen for a long time. Ever since the incident with Rida Muzi, Lei Ho's identity as a spy was exposed. As Lei Ho's relative, the original sponsor, Du Mao, had disappeared without a trace. He Yan heard Cheng Lisu say that Du Mao seemed to have been locked up. He Yan could understand. Since Lei Ho was a spy, no one could guarantee that Du Mao was innocent. Now that Du Mao appeared here, it was probably because the injustice had been cleared. In addition to the kneeling Du Mao, there was also a group of instructors standing in the room. He Yan saw Liang Ping step forward and plead, "Commander-in-Chief, Instructor Du and Lei Ho haven't seen each other for many years." He really didn't know that Lei Ho was a spy. "Please, Commander-in-Chief, give him a way out." "That's right, Commander-in-Chief," Ma Damei couldn't help but say. "Instructor Du has been in the Liangzhou guards for 10 years and has never made a single mistake. If Lei Ho didn't intentionally hide it, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Please, Commander-in-Chief, take into account Instructor Du's hard work for so many years and give him a lighter punishment." The other instructors all agreed and pleaded for Du Mao. Du Mao had been in the Liangzhou guards since he was in his 20s. He had stayed in the bitter cold for 10 years. There wasn't much to play around in the guard station. At most, the instructors would gather together to drink wine during festivals. What they did on a daily basis was either training soldiers or guarding the station. The instructors had deep friendships and naturally didn't want to see Du Mao lose his life because of Lei Ho. They couldn't bear it and came to plead for leniency. Shen Han's lips moved, but he didn't say anything in the end. It wasn't that he didn't have a deep relationship with Du Mao, but even though they had only known each other for less than a year, Shen Han knew that the second young master Xiao in front of him wasn't someone who would change his mind because of someone else's words. As expected, Xiao Ju didn't pay attention to what the others were saying. He looked at Du Mao and said, "What do you plan to do?" He Yan still remembered that when he had first arrived at the Liangzhou guards, this instructor Du Mao had a good relationship with Liang Ping and often argued with Liang Ping. Among the instructors, he was considered young. Now, in just a few short days, he seemed to have aged 10 years. A few strands of white hair had sprouted from his temples, and his expression had aged considerably. Du Mao opened his mouth, unable to hide the exhaustion in his voice. Du Mao is willing to accept punishment. Du Mao. Liang Ping anxiously called out his name. I didn't find out Lei Ho's current status before rashly recommending him to the guard station. This is dereliction of duty, Du Mao said. It is only right for the governor to punish me. You are indeed dereliction of duty, Xiao Ju said calmly. Because of you, many new recruits have died in the Liangzhou guards. The instructors who wanted to continue persuading him stopped in their tracks and didn't dare open their mouths. The dead cannot be revived, Xiao Ju said. Do you understand? Du Mao understands. The room was silent. Liang Ping looked at Du Mao with a look of despair. I won't take your life. As soon as he said this, everyone in the room was stunned. He Yan was also stunned. Xiao Ju said, You can leave. Governor, from today onwards, you are no longer an instructor of the Liangzhou guards. Xiao Ju stood up and walked out of the room. You don't have to come back in the future. His figure disappeared outside the room. After a moment of silence, Ma Damei finally came to her senses and pulled Du Mao, who was still kneeling on the ground. But the governor has shown you mercy. Hurry up and get up. Du Mao stood in a daze and suddenly began to wail. Everyone in the room comforted him and Du Mao's cries. The noise made He Yan's head hurt. She grabbed her clothes and casually put them on. Leaning on a stick, she followed him out of the room. As soon as she stepped out, she shivered from the cold wind and snow outside. Where's Xiao Ju? He Yan looked around. This person had just left the room. How could she be gone now? Could she fly? Looking for me? Someone's voice came from behind. He Yan was so scared that she gasped and almost dropped the stick in her hand. She turned around and saw Xiao Ju standing behind her. She raised her eyebrows and stared at her. What's the matter? No, nothing. He Yan pretended to look at the sky. The weather is very good. I came out for a walk. Xiao Ju glanced at the sand-like snow outside and said mockingly, I thought you didn't eavesdrop enough and wanted to ask me something in person. He actually knew that she was eavesdropping? That was awkward. He Yan scratched her head. The governor's hearing is very good. Xiao Ju smiled. Not as good as yours. Tell me, he asked, why are you looking for me? Why was she looking for him? He Yan didn't know either. She just followed him out subconsciously. She was speechless for a moment. After thinking for a while, she said, Governor, you still showed mercy to Instructor Du. It was one thing for the instructors to have a close personal relationship with Du Mao, but it was another thing for Du Mao to make a mistake. He Yan thought that with Xiao Ju's personality, Du Mao wouldn't be able to escape death. She didn't expect that in the end he would only be expelled from the Liangzhou guards. Xiao Ju laughed. She seemed to think that her words were funny. Showed mercy? Yes, if it were me. What would you do if it were you? He Yan suddenly couldn't say anything. What would she do if it were her? It wasn't that she had never encountered such a situation when she was a junior soldier, a deputy general, and then a general. In fact, General Fei Hong wasn't any more merciful than Xiao Ju. However, most of the time, others subconsciously ignored it. It was only because she usually fought with her subordinates that she didn't have any merciless, great achievements, like Xiao Ju. If it were her, would she give the order to take Du Mao's life? If it were me, I wouldn't either, He Yan said. Taking Du Mao's life seems like a strict military order, but in reality, it hurts people's hearts. The Liangzhou guards just went through the Rida Musi incident. If people's hearts are scattered, the Liangzhou guards will be like a plate of loose sand. It will be difficult for them to stand up. Xiao Ju looked at her with a bit of surprise. That's right. He Yan said proudly, I already said that I'm the #1 Liangzhou guards. I'm very smart. How about it, Commander-in-Chief? Can you let me enter the 9 Flags Battalion? Xiao Ju curled the corner of her mouth. No. This person was really stubborn. He Yan was about to argue for herself when she saw him turn around and continue walking forward. He Yan followed him with a stick and asked, Where are you going, Commander-in-Chief? The training field. Are you going to watch the soldiers train? He Yan said, I'm going too. After she was injured, she naturally couldn't train with them. Every day, other than lying on the bed, she would walk 2 laps outside the house with a stick. It was really boring. Even though Song Tao Tao and Chung Lisu took the opportunity to come over and talk to her, between the two of them, one only remembered trivial things like which girl in the capital was beautiful and which madam liked Lin, while the other didn't know anything other than eating, drinking, and playing. Hien had a hard time talking to them. The only one who could talk to her was Lin Shuanghe. He was even invited by Shen Muxue to the medical hall to help brew medicine for the injured soldiers. Therefore, when Xiao Ju said that they were going to the training field, He Yan was a bit restless. The snow had lessened, and it wasn't as cold outside as before. He Yan couldn't walk fast with the stick and complained, Commander-in-Chief, wait for me. Xiao Ju couldn't help but stop in his tracks when he heard her confident tone. He asked, Am I your servant? He Yan came back to his senses and explained, What I mean is, we can walk slower and talk about other things. Cough. Did Lei Ho say why Rida Musi came to find trouble with us? Wasn't the Western Chang rebellion quelled by General Fei Hong a long time ago? Where did the Chang tribe get so many soldiers? Tens of thousands of soldiers. Did the Chang tribe have so many soldiers now? He Yan had fought with Rida Muji before and was very familiar with the Chang tribe's situation. He felt that something was wrong. It's not the Chang tribe. Xiao Ju rarely answered He Yan's question. It's Yudo. Yuto? This time, He Yan really didn't expect it. Xiao Ju glanced at her and saw her surprised expression. She said lightly, What do you think? Was she testing her? He Yan asked, Is Rida Musi a Yudo? Xiao Ju was speechless for a moment before saying, He's not a Yuto, but other than Rida Musi and a few of your trusted subordinates, the rest of the soldiers are Yudo. Commander-in-Chief, are you sure? Xiao Ju walked forward unhurriedly. I'm sure. If it's really a Yuto, He Yan's voice was serious. Then what the Yudo wants is not just a Liangzhou guard. What do you mean? In recent years, the Yuto kingdom has raised soldiers and is very powerful. They always harass the people at the border with the intention of testing us. Now that they've come to the Liangzhou guard, they use the Chang tribe as an excuse to hide themselves in the dark. They want to use the Chang tribe's name to run amok in Dawei. Commander-in-Chief, think about it. If you really went to Zhangtai and couldn't save them in time, when those Yudo took over the Liangzhou guard and took over the city, Liangzhou city would be taken over by the Yudo. It would be like tearing a hole in Dawei's border. They could go all the way west and follow the river until they reached the capital. Xiao Ju looked up. That's all? I'm afraid there's a traitor in Dawei. He Yan said, This person has Yudo connections and is an old acquaintance of the commander-in-chief. Xiao Ju said, Continue. To be able to secretly plant a trusted aide in the Liangzhou guard and spread fake news in Zhangtai, this person's status is not low and he has a wide network. He knows that the commander-in-chief is impregnable in the Liangzhou guard, so he first lured you away. This person must be very afraid of you. Therefore, He Yan looked at Xiao Ju. Perhaps there is such a person who has a very high position in the imperial court and has fought with the governor in the past but did not gain any advantage. If there is such a person, there is an 80 to 90% chance that he did it. Xiao Ju stared at him and said, Then why don't you tell me who this person is? He Yen felt that it was really strange. Although he and Xiao Ju were classmates, it was only for a year. After that, they hadn't seen each other for many years. One was in the south and the other was in the north. Because of Xiao Zhongwu's matter, Xiao Ju was deeply embroiled in the whirlpool of the imperial court. However, she was a pure and innocent person who relied on military merits to forcefully rise in rank. Every day, she stayed in the border camp, so she didn't know much about the messy affairs of the imperial court. How could she guess who that person was? Even if it was an examination, it was too difficult. Not everyone was like him, who could sleep and become the number one in the Xianchang dojo. Thinking about Yuan Baojin, He Yen said casually, "Su Jingfu?" Xiao Ju was stunned. He Yen saw his expression and his heart jumped. "It's really him?" Xiao Ju didn't answer. Su Jingfu actually colluded with the enemy and committed treason? He Yen was shocked. He's crazy. He's the prime minister of the court. What good would it do him to do such a thing? "You can speak louder," Xiao Ju said indifferently. "If there is no evidence, I can sue you any time for slandering an official of the court." He Yen thought, who isn't an official of the court? In her previous life, when she was a General Feihong, she was also paid by the government. But, she wanted to say something, but Xiao Ju had already stopped and walked forward. Not far away, the sound of soldiers shouting and getting into formation could be heard. Unknowingly, the two of them had already walked to the practice field. The practice field used to only be used by the Liang Province Guard recruits for daily training. Now it was split into two sides. The east side was used by the Nanfu soldiers, while the west side was used by the Liang Province Guard. Now that both sides were training at the same time, the difference was obvious. The deputy commander of the Nanfu soldiers was practicing his footwork. He didn't need anyone to direct him. Just looking at him made people feel that he was brave and invincible. On the other hand, the Liang Province Guard recruits had just started learning how to get into formation. It was inevitable that they were a bit flustered. Shen Han stood on the high platform and shouted with all his might. He Yen looked and hesitated. "They're practicing the fish scale formation?" Xiao Ju glanced at her and asked, "You know? It's here to test people again." He Yen didn't understand Xiao Ju's questions from time to time, but she thought that maybe he was trying to test whether she could enter the 9 Flags Battalion. She could only answer seriously, "They're distributed in echelons. The front part is slightly raised, and the main force is gathered in the center. Then, they're divided into small square formations shaped like fish scales. When facing the enemy, they can concentrate their forces to attack the center of the enemy formation. However, their weakness is at the rear. If the enemy breaks through from the rear, they can break this formation. It's a fish scale formation, but," she said, "they're too loose. Too loose. If they were to slowly get into formation, they would have been killed 5 times over." Xiao Ju looked at her thoughtfully. Suddenly, she curled her lips and said, "Not bad." He Yen was very proud. Her hard work paid off. Who would have thought that she, who was the last in the Xianchang dojo in the past, was now so familiar with the art of war that she could easily answer the questions of the first in the Xianchang dojo. Her hair hadn't turned white in the war, and she hadn't wasted her time studying. "You've learned the art of war?" Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. "I know a little." "You know how to set up formations?" "You flatter me." Xiao Ju looked at the soldiers training below the stage and said, "If de Muzi came to the Liangzhou Guard that day and you weren't locked in the dungeon, and Shen Han gave you command of the army, how would you fight this battle?" She was going to give him a question so soon? He Yen thought for a moment and said slowly, "Those Yudo soldiers are strong and vicious. The new recruits of the Liangzhou Guard haven't been to the battlefield yet, so their morale is low. It's hard to fight them head-on, and it's not something that can be solved in a short time. If it was me, I would use the carriage formation." Xiao Ju looked at her calmly. "Go on." "As the main general, I would be in the center of the formation. The soldiers outside would be arranged layer by layer. The soldiers would be scattered outside, forming a roving formation. When the battle starts, they would rotate in the same direction and take turns attacking the enemy's formation, just like a spinning wheel. In this way, if we don't constantly exert pressure on the enemy, the Yudo will collapse from exhaustion. Our side will be replenished and rested by taking turns to attack, and will recover our fighting strength. You're the main general? Xiao Ju mocked. What I mean is, I'll temporarily be the main general. The one who really needs to fight is still you, Commander. The reason why I chose the carriage formation is to stall for time so that you can rush back to support us, He Yen said sincerely. Xiao Ju turned around and bent down slightly. She looked down at her and smiled. Lady, he's learned the art of war well. It's a pity that he's not a general. No matter what, Xiao Ju had a pretty good eye. He Yen nodded and said, I think so too. I feel that I was born to be a general. Sometimes, I even feel that I was a female general in my previous life. Xiao Ju, Commander, you don't believe me? He Yen poked a hole in the snow with a stick. Or do you think that women can't be generals? I don't think so. He Yen raised her head and looked at him. Everyone thought that women should stay in the boudoir, embroider, draw eyebrows, and wait for their husbands to favor them. Not to mention being a female general, even if they were to appear in public as a female shopkeeper, a female teacher, or a female doctor, they would receive strange looks from many people. There were very few who could take that step. Even if they did, others would not understand. You can do whatever you want. The young man's eyes were lazy and the corners of his mouth twitched. As long as you can do it, it's fine. He Yen was stunned for a moment and stared at him without saying anything. His gaze fell on the training field in the distance and the recruits who were training. He did not see He Yan's gaze behind him. Thank you, He Yen said softly in her heart. The snow gradually stopped. The recruits led by Shin Han practiced a few times and were not as flustered as they were at the beginning. Seeing the initial results, Xiao Ju and He Yen also stood here for a long time. A familiar voice sounded behind them. Why Jin? Brother. He Yen turned around and saw Lin Shuanghe. Lin Shuanghe climbed up to the attic and brushed the snow off his boots. No wonder I couldn't find you two anywhere. So you came here. He looked at Xiao Ju and smiled mischievously. You brought our sister He here to watch the training? He Yen. Dr. Lin, please don't call me sister outside. I'm sorry. Lin Shuanghe covered his mouth with his fan and apologized. I forgot. But there are no outsiders here. He glanced at the stick He Yen was holding and asked, Can you get out of bed and walk so far today? How is it, does your wound still hurt? It doesn't hurt too much, He Yen said. Dr. Lin's medical skills are superb. I feel much better today. That's great. Lin Shuanghe waved his fan. If I can't cure you, I will feel very guilty. The two of them complimented each other. Xiao Ju looked on coldly from the side. She couldn't stand it anymore and said impatiently, If you have something to say, say it. Lin Shuanghe was stunned. I almost forgot about the important matter. Someone from the Liangzhou guards just came. I wanted to find Shin Jiaodo, but Shin Jiaodo wasn't here. It took me a long time to find you here. Who is it? Someone from the palace said that His Majesty will reward you for the great victory of the Liangzhou guards. Alright, there's also that. He couldn't remember who it was. It took him a while to remember the name. The fourth son of Count Shijin's residence, Chu Xilan. That's right, Chu Xilan is here too. Chu Zhao. Xiao Ju frowned. What's he doing here? Lin Shuanghe shrugged. How would I know? They're all waiting at the entrance of the guards. Aren't you going to take a look? Xiao Ju paused, then walked down the stairs. Let's go. Commander-in-Chief, what about me? He Yen hurriedly leaned on his stick. He wanted to follow, but he didn't know if he could. Xiao Ju didn't look like an old friend catching up. Xiao Ju looked at him and said, You can go back. There's no need to follow. He Yen obediently agreed. Lin Shuanghe waved his hand at him. The two of them quickly went down the stairs, their figures disappearing into the distance. He Yen looked at the vast expanse of snow. He was a bit confused. Who exactly was this person called Chu Xilan? Chapter 119. There was a group of people standing outside the garrison. The servants beside the carriages were unloading boxes from the carriages and were extremely busy. The guests were sitting and drinking tea in the resting area outside the garrison. As soon as Xiaoju entered, she saw Liang Ping pouring tea for the guests. Fourth young Master Chu. The first to greet him was Lin Shuanghe. He waved his fan and walked forward as if he were a host greeting a guest. Is the tea to your liking? Chu Xilan stood up and cupped his hands in greeting to Lin Shuanghe and Xiaoju. Military Governor Xiao, young Master Lin. He smiled and said, the Liang Province garrison's Yunwu tea is mellow and elegant, leaving a lingering fragrance on the teeth and cheeks. Governor, you are so lucky. Xiaoju pulled over a chair and sat down. She stared at him and said, it's just some coarse tea, no need to be so polite. Chu Xilan was not angry. He only smiled and said, Governor, you are joking. The fourth young master of Shi Jinbo's household was about the same age as Xiaoju. Compared to Xiaoju's usual indifferent and lazy expression, he appeared much gentler. He was also very good-looking. His facial features were delicate, his skin was fair, and he wore a loose jade-colored robe. He appeared even thinner than before. His eyes were long and narrow, and he always had a smile on his face. He was truly an elegant gentleman, as gentle as jade. The two of them stood together. One was as cold as autumn water, the other as bright and clear as an orchid. It was a very pleasing sight to behold. Beside Chu Zhao stood a girl who looked like a maidservant. Although she was wearing the clothes of a maidservant, she was exceptionally beautiful. Her facial features were deep and bright. Even though she was wearing plain clothes, it was difficult to conceal her beauty. Lin Shuanghe was used to seeing beautiful women, but when he saw this girl's appearance, he couldn't help but be dazzled. He sighed inwardly. When master and servant stood together, they did not look like people of the mortal world. Of Shi Jinbo's 4 sons, the first 3 had average looks. Only this one looked so beautiful. It seemed that a mother's appearance was very important. Fourth young Master Chu, why have you come to the Liang State Guard? Xiaoju asked. Chu Zhao laughed and said, His Majesty heard that military governor Xiao has annihilated tens of thousands of enemy troops in the Liangzhou Guard and eradicated the remaining evildoers of the Chang tribe. His Majesty's dragon countenance was greatly pleased and specially sent me to deliver the reward, while at the same time he wanted to see the morale of the Liangzhou Guard. Reward? Xiaoju looked at him playfully and said carelessly, Liangzhou is a cold and bitter place. For fourth young Master Chu to lower himself to come and watch. He smiled. It's not simple. Chu Zhao said, It is Xilan's fortune to be able to see the mighty army led by military governor Xiao with her own eyes. Xiaoju laughed but didn't say anything. His Majesty also ordered me to hold a banquet to celebrate our victory in Liang Province. Chu Zhao said, However, I am not clear on how the Liang Province Guard normally celebrates. Therefore, I can only trouble the commander-in-chief. The new recruits who died in battle have just been buried, Xiaoju said. I'm afraid it's not very appropriate to celebrate now. Chu Zhao's smile was gentle, but his tone was firm. How can there not be blood in war? Besides, annihilating the enemy is a joyous occasion. Rewards should be rewarded. This is also His Majesty's intention. Was he using the Emperor Wenshuan's name? Xiaoju stared at him for a while. After a while, he nodded and smiled. All right. He stood up and said meaningfully, We can hold a celebration banquet tomorrow. Fourth young Master Chu, please come and join us. Chu Zhao stood up and returned the salute. Deference is no substitute for obedience. Xiaoju left the room and ordered Fei Nu, Arrange a room for fourth young Master Chu's people. Fei Nu accepted the order and left. Lin Shuanghe followed him out and moved closer to him. He asked in a low voice, What did Chu Zhao come here for? From the looks of it, is he going to stay in the Liang Province Guard for a while? Su Jingfu is anxious now that he's gone, Xiaoju said calmly. He sent his dog over to take a look. Is there a problem? Lin Shuanghe looked back at the room and saw Chu Zhao drinking tea with his head lowered. He asked, Isn't it a bit unsafe for him to stay here? After all, this guy is Su Jingfu's man. Unsafe? Xiaoju said, That depends on his ability. Let's go. Where are we going? Since it's a reward, we should see what's inside. Xiao Ju said playfully. He came to the Liang province guard with such great fanfare. It's just a few boxes of rewards. Isn't that a bit unreasonable? You want to take advantage of this opportunity again? Xiao Ju glanced at him. Lin Shuanghe said, I don't mean anything else. I'm just asking. Don't be angry. Let's go see the treasures. He Yen returned from the martial arts practice field and returned to his idle state. He lay on the bed and read a few travel books while waiting for Song Taotao to bring him food. After eating, Song Taotao was about to leave when he heard some movement outside the door. It seemed that Song Taotao was talking to someone. He thought that Xiao Ju had returned, so he got off the bed and opened the door. He saw Lin Shuanghe immediately. Dr. Lin? He Yen looked around but didn't see Xiao Ju. He asked, Is the commander-in-chief not here? He went to discuss the celebration banquet with the instructor. Lin Shuanghe smiled. I'll wait for him in the room. I have something to tell him. Celebration banquet? He Yen was confused. What celebration banquet? The Liang Province Guard's celebration banquet. Lin Shuanghe waved at Song Taotao. After Song Taotao left, he walked towards He Yen. However, when he reached the door, he suddenly stopped and didn't want to go any further. He Yen was confused. What's wrong? Lin Shuanghe retracted his hand and said seriously, It's not good for a man and a woman to be in the same room. If word gets out, it will damage your reputation. He Yen was speechless. She said, No one knows my identity here. Dr. Lin, you can just treat me as a normal recruit. Also, didn't you come here before? Lin Shuanghe waved his hand reservedly. There were other people in the room before. Now it's just the two of us. I'm afraid that it will cause a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? He Yen was helpless. I often stay in the same room as the commander-in-chief. There's nothing wrong with it. Lin Shuanghe took a step back. That's even more unacceptable. I can't play with my friend's wife. Do you think I'm a despicable person who would betray my friend? He Yen was speechless. What kind of nonsense was this person spouting? She thought for a moment and finally came up with a good idea. How about this, young Master Lin? You go to the commander-in-chief's room and I'll stay in my room. I'll open the middle door and we'll talk through it. This way, we won't be in the same room, but in two separate rooms. How does this work? Lin Shuanghe didn't expect He Yen to be able to do this. After a moment of surprise, he slapped his fan. Let's do it this way. He Yen returned to his room and used Chung Lisu's silver thread to pry open the lock. He struggled to push a stool to the other side of the middle door. Lin Shuanghe was already waiting there. He looked at the middle door and asked He Yen, Do you usually play like this? Well, Lin Shuanghe seemed to feel embarrassed when he said this. He shook his head and smiled. I didn't expect Huaijin to be like this as well. He Yen was confused by his words, but he still remembered what he said about the celebratory feast. He asked, Dr. Lin, what's the celebratory feast you mentioned earlier? Didn't you defeat Raida Muzi's people and wipe out tens of thousands of enemy troops? Lin Shuanghe said. When His Majesty heard about this, he was very happy. He specially sent people to bring rewards to commend you. He also wants to hold a celebratory feast at the Liang Prefecture Guard to reward the 3 armies. He Yen was stunned when he heard this. Now? It's not very good to celebrate now. It wasn't a good time to celebrate in the Liang Prefecture Guard. Although they won this battle, they came in a hurry. At the beginning, they didn't know what was going on, so dozens of sentries died. Even though they won in the end, it was mostly because of the support of the South Mansion soldiers. Compared to the joy of winning the battle, the feelings of these new soldiers right now were probably more of sadness and fear of the death of their comrades. How could it be good to celebrate at this time? What can we do about His Majesty's intentions? Lin Shuanghe sighed. How can we not appreciate his kindness? For a moment, neither of them spoke. After a while, He Yen asked, The person who came to deliver His Majesty's decree is the one you were talking about today, Chu Xilin, right? He Yen asked, Who is Chu Xilin? You've never heard of Chu Xilin? This time, Lin Shuanghe was surprised. He Yen shook his head. Xiao Ruby is the #1 dream man in the capital, Xiao Huijin is #2, and Chu Xilin is #3. Lin Shuanghe sighed. However, ever since Xiao Ruby got married, there's only Xiao Huijin and Chu Xilin. Our Huijin has a cold personality and doesn't like to talk to girls. In the past few years, he's not as good as Chu Xilin. Although Chu Xilin's background is a bit low, he's good-looking and gentle. He's not even engaged yet. If you ask the girls in the capital who they want to marry, they'll probably say Chu Xilin. What? He looked at He Yen. You've never heard of him when you were in the capital? That's impossible. Of course, He Yen didn't know. Previously, she had been leading troops into battle. How could she have the time to pay attention to the affairs of the heart or the handsome men in the capital? Later, she returned to the capital and quickly got married. She had no way of knowing about other men. Chu Xilin really hadn't heard of him. I've been raised in the boudoir by my father since I was young. I never left the house and rarely even spoke to other men, He Yen said seriously. I really don't know anything about the outside world. Is that so? Lin Shuanghe said. Then your father is really strict with you. He Yen nodded. That's true. She asked, what's the relationship between Chu Xilin and military governor Xiao? Xiao Ju wasn't close to people. She hadn't seen him like anyone, but she hadn't seen him hate anyone either. Su Jingfu was one of them. She hadn't seen Chu Xilin today, but just hearing his name made Xiao Ju unhappy. Could it be that they had a grudge in the past? That's a long story. Lin Shuanghe stood up and poured himself a cup of tea. He drank the tea to moisten his throat before sitting down again. He said to He Yen, you haven't heard of Chu Xilin, but have you heard of his father, Shi Jinbo, Chu Linfeng? He Yen felt that the name sounded familiar. She thought for a moment and said, is he the one who married 19 concubines, each of them outstanding beauties? He Yen remembered the name Chu Linfeng. When she was in the army, the deputy generals and subordinates would gather together to chat. They didn't envy the emperor, but they envied Shi Jinbo the most. Shi Jinbo was born handsome and was famous for being a handsome man in Dawei. His wife was a few years older than him. She was ugly and had a fierce temperament. A wastrel like Chu Linfeng wouldn't give up so easily. Before they were married, he spent every day in the flower shop. After they were married, he became even more serious. The wife he married was virtuous. She seemed to know that she was ordinary and wasn't favored by her husband, so she never stopped him from taking in concubines. Over the years, he took in 19 concubines. Each of them was beautiful, charming, and had their own interests. But taking in concubines was one thing. Over the years, other than the 3 young masters who crawled out of his wife's womb, no concubine was able to give birth to Shi Jinbo's children. It was said that these concubines were all fed sterile drugs before they entered the Chu family. No matter how favored they were, if they didn't have children, they could only curry favor with the master or the mistress. Shi Jinbo's wife had a tight control over these concubines. No one dared to cause trouble under her watch. Shi Jinbo continued to be lovey-dovey with his concubines every day. Shi Jinbo's wife only pretended not to see and raised her 3 sons. Chu Xilin was Shi Jinbo's 4th son, but he wasn't born of Shi Jinbo's wife. Is he a concubine's illegitimate son? He Yen asked. No, Lin Shuanghe said. Madame Chu is even stricter with her concubines than your father is with you. How could a concubine give birth to a son? Then, I don't know what exactly happened either. In short, one day, during the Chu family's banquet, there was an additional 4-year-old son named Chu Zhao. Lin Shuanghe took another sip of tea. Although it wasn't said, everyone knew that Chu Zhao was most likely Chu Linfeng's illegitimate son. He Yan's eyes widened. Madame Chu was very careful, but she didn't expect Shi Jinbo to have such a trick up his sleeve. The child was already 4 years old and recognized him in front of everyone. What else could happen? Lin Shuanghe spread his hands. If that was the case, Chu Xilin would only be Chu Xilin's illegitimate son. However, when Chu Xilin was 10 years old, he was registered under Madame Chu's name. Therefore, his current status is the 4th son of Shi Jinbo's official wife. Do you know why? Why? Because he was the favorite student of the current Prime Minister, Su Jingfu. He Yan was stunned. Su Jingfu again? Although Shi Jinbo was dissolute, he wasn't a kind father. I think Chu Xilan didn't have a good life under Madame Chu. I don't know how he was able to live until he was 10 years old, and then he hooked up with Su Jingfu. How could Shi Jinbo not give Prime Minister Su face? Later, he registered Chu Zhao under Madame Chu's name. It was probably Su Jingfu's idea. Then this fourth young Master Chu is very powerful. Lin Shuanghe looked at He Yan. Do you think he's very powerful? Very powerful. As you said, he didn't have any external help in the residence. His father didn't love him, and his mother wasn't by his side. Now that he's the official wife's young master, he was able to get His Majesty to send him to the Liangzhou guards to deliver the imperial edict. It's very powerful that he was able to reach this step on his own. If he wasn't powerful, how could he have become Su Jingfu's favorite student? Lin Shuanghe shook his head and sighed. Then what about his mother? He Yan asked. Wasn't she taken into Count Shi Jinbo's residence? I don't know. Lin Shuanghe shook his head. I heard that she died after giving birth to him. If that wasn't the case, with Chu Xilan's current abilities, he should be able to let her live a better life. He Yan nodded thoughtfully. I see. It's a pity that military governor Xiao doesn't like fourth young Master Chu. Xiao Ju and Su Jingfu were enemies, not friends. Chu Xilan was Su Jingfu's student. Naturally, he was also Xiao Ju's enemy. Brother, Lin Shuanghe said, if you had to choose between Huaijin and Chu Xilan, who would you side with? He Yan felt that this question was simply inconceivable. Why do you ask? I'm just curious as to what choice the young lady from Dawei will make. I don't even know Chu Xilan, He Yan said. Of course I'll side with the governor. Lin Shuanghe revealed a meaningful smile. There's no need to speak so early. You'll be able to see Chu Xilan at the celebration banquet tomorrow. He Yan, so what if I see him? What's so special about him? He Yan didn't expect that, just as Lin Shuanghe said, she would see the man of Dawei's dreams the next day. He was the fourth young Master Chu Xilan, who could compete with Xiao Ju. It was rare that it didn't snow that night. The next day, it just so happened to be a sunny day. Although the weather was cold, people felt warm when the sun shone on them. He Yan got out of bed to eat porridge. She felt that the wound on her waist healed faster after being exposed to the sun. The Liangzhou guards were really strange. During the summer, they were so hot that they would cry and scream whenever they saw the sun. During the winter, they would be happy if they could even see half the sun. She couldn't go to the martial arts arena for day training now, but she felt that the sun was very good, so she decided to walk around the courtyard with her staff. She had just reached the door when she heard Song Taotao's voice. I saw this golden pastry roll first. It's mine. Immediately after, a woman's good-natured voice said, Miss, this pastry roll was specially made by our young master's chef. It didn't come from the Guard Institute's kitchen, so it's not yours. You think it's your young master's just because you say so? The young lady said angrily, It's all in the kitchen. How would I know if it was made by your chef? Since you have a chef, can't you just make another pastry roll? The process of making golden pastry rolls is troublesome. If we make another pastry roll, we'll miss the young master's mealtime. Then don't eat it. Miss, He Yan couldn't listen anymore. He walked out and said, Miss Song. Song Tao turned her head and looked over with the woman who was arguing with her. She said happily, Big brother He, this is a golden pastry roll. Do you want to try it? He Yan, the woman also said, That's the young master's. He Yan took the golden pastry roll and returned it to the woman. He said, She's just a child who doesn't know any better. Please don't mind her. Big brother He. Song Taotao stomped her feet in anger. Why did you return it to her? It's mine to begin with. He Yan shook his head. She guessed that the young master the woman was talking about was probably the fourth young master of Count Shi Jin's estate, Chu Xilan. Chu Xilan and Xiao Ju's relationship was so delicate. If he caused any trouble for Xiao Ju because of this, the loss would outweigh the gain. Thank you, young master. The woman smiled sweetly at He Yen. He Yen was also stunned. For a moment, he was shocked by the young lady's beauty. There were very few young ladies in the Liang province guard. Excluding her, who was a fake, there were only Shenmu Xue and Song Tao. One was elegant and beautiful, while the other was adorable. Now that there was someone as beautiful as a peony, it was especially eye-catching. Even Chu Xilan's maidservant was this beautiful? He Yen thought to himself. Previously, Lin Shuanghe had mentioned that De Wei women ranked their husbands first. Only an idiot would choose Chu Xilan. If the maidservant he picked was already this beautiful, how could a normal woman catch his eye? He might as well choose Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju was surrounded by men. Perhaps he had seen too many men, and now he saw a woman, so his requirements were much lower and there was still a chance. Seeing He Yen staring at the woman's face without saying anything, Song Taotao became even more anxious. She anxiously tugged on He Yan's sleeve and said, "Why are you looking at her? What's there to look at?" The woman holding the golden pastry roll saw this and burst into laughter. Her smile was captivating. "Ing Xiang," someone said. The maidservant named Ing Xiang immediately stopped smiling and bowed. "Fourth young master." "Fourth young master? Chu Xilan?" He Yen turned around and his gaze fell on the person in front of him. It was a young man wearing a light jade-colored robe with extremely wide sleeves and a jade crown. He looked as noble and pure as an orchid, but also as handsome as a banished immortal. He had a faint smile on his face as he nodded at He Yen. He Yen frowned. This person's appearance was very familiar. When he saw He Yen, he was also startled. After a moment, he smiled as if he had seen through He Yan's thoughts. He stretched out his hand with his palm facing up and said softly, "Little brother, you dropped something." He Yen suddenly came back to his senses. She remembered where she had seen this person before. That day, she was still in Shuajing. For He Yunxing's tuition fee, she had racked her brains and had no choice but to go to Litong village to gamble. However, she had been chased by the losers. After she had beaten them all, someone suddenly appeared and told her that she had dropped some money. That person's good looks were hard to forget as long as one had seen him. Now that he suddenly saw him here, because it was daytime, He Yen didn't recognize him for a moment. Instead, he recognized He Yen first. "Your fourth young master Chu?" He Yen asked. Chu Xilan nodded. "That's me." He Yen was momentarily speechless. What kind of luck was this? What kind of coincidence was this? Just by casually climbing over a wall at night to fight, she was able to meet the man of De Wei's dreams. "This one is Chu Zhao." Chu Xilan looked at He Yen with a smile. "Little brother and I can be considered old acquaintances, but I don't know your name. May I know your name?" He Yen could somewhat understand why He Yen was able to be on par with Xiao Ju. He hurriedly returned the greeting. "You flatter me. This one is He Yen. The in grass and trees He Yen in clear river and clear sea." Chu Zhao smiled. "That's a good name." He looked around and asked in confusion, "Why is brother He here?" He Yen said, "I am a new recruit of the Liang province guards. However, I was injured a few days ago, so I did not go to the practice field for training." "I see." At this time, Song Taotao, who had been silent all this time, finally reacted. She carefully pulled on He Yan's hand. Perhaps it was because she saw that Chu Xilan was too handsome, but her aggressive attitude towards Ing Xiang instantly disappeared. She even felt a bit embarrassed. In a low voice, she asked, "Brother He, who is this person? Do you know him?" This question was difficult to answer. She knew Chu Zhao, but she was not as familiar with him as Song Taotao thought. It was just that she had suddenly seen a familiar face in the Liang province guards, so she subconsciously became a bit excited. He Yen said, "This is the fourth young master of Count Shijin's residence. I met him once when I was in Shuo capital." Chu Zhao smiled. "We can be considered old acquaintances." Chapter 120. When He Yen and Chu Xilan were talking, they didn't notice that Xiao Ju and Lin Shuanghe were standing behind a tree not too far away. Lin Shuanghe looked at them and asked curiously, "It seems that Sister He knows Chu Xilan? When I asked her yesterday, why did she say that she didn't know him?" "You asked her?" "Yes, I even asked her, if you and Chu Xilan had a conflict, whose side would she stand on?" Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and smiled. "Do you want to know how she answered?" "Xiaoju, why are you like this?" Lin Shuanghe said, "Let me tell you, Sister He said without thinking that she doesn't know Chu Xilan, so of course she would stand on your side. However," he looked at the two people talking in the distance and said, "she clearly knows him, so why did she say that she doesn't know him?" Xiaoju sneered, "Why would you believe the words of a swindler?" "Swindler?" Lin Shuanghe looked at Xiaoju. "What did she lie to you about? Could it be?" He thought of something and pretended to exclaim in a low voice, "She and Chu Xilan are in cahoots? Is she also one of Su Jingfu's people?" Xiaoju didn't want to bother with him. As they were talking, the beautiful servant named Ying Xiang turned her head and saw them. She immediately called out from afar, "Military Governor Xiao, young Master Lin." There was nowhere to hide now. Lin Shuanghe stood up and nodded reservedly. "Fourth young Master Chu, brother He." He Yen asked, "Did you also come out to sunbathe?" "We just came out for a walk." Lin Shuanghe held his fan and looked at He Yen and Chu Zhao. He asked tentatively, "Did brother He and fourth young Master Chu know each other?" He Yen said, "It's just a chance encounter. I only found out that he was fourth young Master Chu after meeting him at the Liang Province Guard Institution. I was also very surprised." "What do you mean by that? Let's hear it." Lin Shuanghe was relentless. Chu Zhao stood there with a smile. He had no intention of taking the initiative to explain. Xiaoju's gaze was also calm, but it made He Yen feel a little cold. Song Tao, on the other hand, was very curious and asked, "That's right, that's right. How did you two know each other?" That, He Yen could only brace himself and explain. "Previously, when I was in Shuajing, I went to Lutong village to gamble at night and won a lot of silver. I was chased by people and accidentally met fourth young Master Chu. Fourth young Master Chu found the money I left behind and returned it to me. At that time, I did not know his identity, so I hurriedly thanked him and left." "Lutong Villa?" Song Taotao was shocked. "Big brother He, you're gambling? Didn't you say that your father is very strict with you and that you don't leave the house?" Lin Shuanghe couldn't help but ask. He Yen raised his head and met Xiaoju's half-smile. He couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb. Taking a step back, he said, "At that time, I was forced to make a living. I only went there once. I haven't gone there since." Lin Shuanghe and Xiaoju both knew that she was a woman. For a woman to go gambling alone at night, it was a bit too shocking. Furthermore, gambling was not a good thing, but to say it in front of this group of important people really made her feel ashamed. "I didn't think that brother He would come to the Liang Province Guard Institution," Chu Zhao said with a slight smile. "It can be said that you and I are fated. That night, I still remember how strong brother He was when he dealt with those thugs." "Are you very strong?" Lin Shuanghe asked He Yen. He Yen gave a perfunctory smile. "I was just lucky. At tonight's celebratory feast, I must drink a few more cups with brother He," Chu Zhao said. "That way, we won't waste our fate." He Yen, Thank you, fourth young Master Chu." She thought that this Chu Zhao was really too easy to get along with. As the son of Shi Jinbo, and now Su Jingfu's favorite student, no matter what, it was rare for him to be so patient and gentle to a normal recruit like her. Not to mention whether he was good or bad, just based on his ability to conduct himself, there was nothing to say. Ying Xiang, Chu Zhao glanced at Song Taotao and said with a smile, "Give the golden roll to this little girl to eat. I don't need these." Song Tao was overwhelmed by this favor. For me?" "Yes," he said warmly. "If you really like it, I can have the chef make it for you every day." "But, young master," Ying Xiang said hesitantly, "I brought the chef here especially for you." "I'm not particular about what I eat," Chu Zhao said. "There's no need to make these every day." Then, Song Tao hesitated for a moment, then looked at him. "Thank you, fourth young Master Chu." "You're welcome." He Yan looked at him and felt that Lin Shuanghe had mentioned yesterday that De Wei was the #1 man in women's dreams. No wonder Chu Xilan had surpassed him. He looked like this, and he was so gentle and considerate to women. He was probably the type that everyone, regardless of age, would like. Ying Xiang handed the plate with the golden roll to Song Taoda. Chu Zhao looked at Xiao Ju. Military Governor Xiao, where are you planning to go? The martial arts arena. Xiao Ju smiled. Fourth young Master Chu, do you also want to go? There's no need for me to go. Chu Zhao smiled. I'll just go back to my room and read for a while. Lin Shuanghe cupped his hands towards Chu Zhao. Then I'll see you tonight. He then looked at He Yan. Brother He, what are you doing? Me. He Yan didn't dare to stay too long with Chu Zhao. This person was still Su Jingfu's student. Who knew if he was a friend or foe? He said, the weather is good today. I'm planning to take advantage of the sun to walk around the courtyard and recover. That's fine too. Lin Shuanghe instructed. Just don't make too much of a commotion. He Yan nodded. The group then parted ways. Because Chu Zhao lived nearby, He Yan didn't dare to go out casually. Even though she really did want to ask Chu Zhao about the situation in Shuojing. However, looking at the atmosphere between Xiao Ju and Chu Zhao, at least now wasn't a good time to ask. She went to the courtyard and tried to throw away the stick. She walked around for a while and only stopped when she felt tired. Then, she went back to her room to sleep and read. In the blink of an eye, it was already evening. Cheng Lisu knocked on the door early in the morning. Big brother. He Yan went to open the door for him. Cheng Lisu had changed into a new set of amber robes. The corners of the robes were embroidered with a group of black-tailed koi fish. He was in high spirits and grabbed He Yan's hand. I was afraid that you would be sleeping, so I didn't dare to come early. Look at my new robes. Do you think they look good? He Yan, can I ask you a question? What is it? Why do you have koi fish embroidered on every piece of clothing? When they were in Liangzhou City, Cheng Lisu gave her a set of robes with koi fish embroidered on the corners. He Yan had wanted to ask him for a long time. Was there a special meaning behind it? You don't know. Cheng Lisu turned around. Speaking of which, my father fell in love with my mother at first sight. However, my mother's family had already taken her place in another family. They disliked my father because he was 2 years younger than my mother. My father bribed the cook in the residence to send the koi fish to my mother's small kitchen. When the cook was butchering the koi fish, he saw the letter inside. My mother was moved by the letter. Later, she persuaded my grandmother to marry my father. Cheng Lisu usually didn't remember poetry and literature. However, he remembered it by heart now. He spoke with fervor and assurance. The guest came from afar, leaving me a pair of koi fish. Who cooked koi fish, and there was a ruler in the book. Kneeling and reading the book, what was in the book? On the top, it said to be longing for each other. On the bottom, it said to be eating more rice. He proudly said, my name came from this book. He Yan was stunned. It's that interesting? That's right. Cheng Lisu turned around and showed He Yan the koi embroidery on his body. Later on, my clothes and hairpins were mostly in the shape of a koi fish. After all, the koi fish were my parents' matchmakers. Wearing it is wearing my parents' love for me. At this moment, He Yan was truly envious of Cheng Lisu. She said, your parents are so good. Of course. Cheng Lisu finished speaking and looked at He Yan. Big brother, aren't you going to wear something else for tonight's celebration? He Yan lowered his head and looked at himself. What's wrong with wearing this? Isn't everyone dressed like this? She was still wearing the uniform of the Liang province guards. Today, she specially wore red for the celebration. But you're the one who defeated Raida Muko. It's too plain to dress like this. I don't have any other clothes, He Yan said. This is good. Let's go. The instructor can't wait. Cheng Lisu shrugged and didn't force her. She closed the door for her and the two of them walked to the wilderness at the foot of Baiyue Mountain. Today was the celebration banquet to celebrate the Liang province guard's victory over Raida Muzi's rebel army. There was no snow tonight, but it was colder than usual. A bonfire burned in the wilderness. The recruits sat on the ground and drank wine and ate meat. Although they were drinking wine and eating meat, compared to the previous Mid-Autumn Festival, it was much more desolate. After all, they had just lost their comrades and were still traumatized from the war. The celebration was a little forced. The rewards had already been distributed to the instructors. Xiao Ju was very generous and distributed all the spoils of war to the soldiers. She didn't keep the rewards from Her Majesty for herself either. When Cheng Li Su arrived at the wilderness, she went to find Xiao Ju. He Yen, on the other hand, went to the other side of Mount Hong. These days, she did not go to the martial arts arena, so the number of times she met with them was much less. Xiao Mai saw him and shouted, "Ai He Gu, you're here." He Yen sat down beside her. "How are you?" Hong Shan handed her a piece of roasted rabbit meat. "Are you feeling better? I see that you're not holding a stick anymore. Can you go now?" He Yen took the rabbit meat. The rabbit meat was roasted until it was sizzling with oil. During the winter, all the wild beasts were hibernating, so rabbits were difficult to catch. Just the smell of it made her hungry. She took a bite and chewed as she said, "Not bad. In another 2 months, I'll be able to fight alongside you all again." "Forget it," Wang Ba said with disgust. "Aren't you the only one in the limelight every time? I heard that the higher-ups gave you 10 taels of silver as a reward." He was very jealous. "You're rich." Brother, he almost lost his life. 10 taels of silver is nothing. He should get a bigger share. Jiang Jiao said, "But I thought that brother he would get a promotion this time. I didn't expect that he didn't." He Yen was angry when this matter was brought up. Logically speaking, she made a contribution and helped the Liang province guards. No matter what, she shouldn't be a small soldier. Even if she didn't get a promotion, she should go to the 9 Flags Battalion. Even if she didn't go to the 9 Flags Battalion, she should go to the Vanguard Battalion. But now, she received more rewards than normal recruits, but promotion? She didn't even see a shadow. Was it so hard to be promoted as a soldier under Xiao Ju? Don't say any more. If you continue, brother, he will get angry again. Huang Xiong saw that she was unhappy and said, "You've already won over everyone in the Liang province guards. Even if it's not now, you'll get a promotion sooner or later. Don't worry." He Yen went against her conscience and said, "I'm not worried." It was just that she tossed and turned on her bed in the middle of the night. She wanted nothing more than to rush into the room next door and grab Xiao Ju and ask her why. Although the celebratory banquet was a celebratory banquet, Xiao Ju wasn't here. The rewards had already been distributed to everyone, so tonight was just a gathering of the recruits. The Liang province guards were next to Mount Baiyue, while the southern prefecture guards were next to Wulu River. They minded their own business. Shi Tu poured He Yen a bowl of wine and said, "Drink." He Yen stared at the wine in the bowl. "I'm injured right now. I can't drink so much." "That's right, I almost forgot." Hong Shan took the bowl away. "Then don't drink. Just drink water." He Yen said, "Okay." After sitting for a while, she heard someone call her from behind. "Brother He." He Yen turned around and was stunned. It was actually Chu Zhao. By Chu Zhao's side, there was also that beautiful maidservant, Ying Xiang. It was rare to see such a beautiful woman in the Liang province guards. For a moment, Hong Shan and the others were stunned. Wang Ba whispered, "This brat. Why does he always have such good luck with women?" He thought that he was whispering, but everyone present heard him. Ying Xiang couldn't help but laugh. Chu Zhao also laughed. "I already told brother He that I would definitely drink with you today," Ying Xiang said. "Before our young master came, he specially brought Chang and Chun. Please drink with us, young master He." As soon as she finished speaking, she heard Wang Ba gulp loudly. He Yen. She was in a bit of a dilemma. If she knew that she was drinking with Chu Zhao, would Xiao Ju think that she was in cahoots with Chu Zhao? It would really be snowing in June. As if he could see her dilemma, Chu Zhao smiled and said, "It's just a cup. If it's inconvenient for brother He, then it's fine." He Yen had always been amenable to coaxing, but not coercion. Seeing such an immortal young master being so gentle and knowing when to advance or retreat, she felt a bit apologetic. She wasn't some important person, so why would he personally invite her? It was just a cup of wine. She could just treat it as returning the favor of that silver ingot. He Yen said, "It's just a cup of wine. There's nothing inconvenient about it." "Then please follow this servant, young master He." Ing Xiang turned around with a smile. He Yen originally thought that Chu Zhao was talking about drinking in the wilderness where the recruits were. Who would have thought that he would bring her to Chu Zhao's room? She didn't know if Xiao Ju was using her position to take revenge, but Chu Zhao's room really couldn't be considered luxurious. It couldn't even compare to Chung Li Su's room. It was just a bit better than the bunk rooms the recruits had. However, the courtyard was very large. On the stone bench in the courtyard, there was a jug of wine and some dried fruits and snacks. I didn't know what young master he likes to eat, so I casually prepared some side dishes, Ing Xiang said, ashamed. If it's not to your liking, I ask that young master he be more tolerant. There's no need to be so polite. It's already very good. He Yen was overwhelmed by the favor. She was only a recruit in the Liang Province Guard. This was the first time she was treated like someone with status. However, He Yen was also secretly curious. Why was Chu Zhao treating her so well? She was just a recruit. There was no need to be so polite. Just as she was thinking this, Ing Xiang had already picked up the white jade jug on the table and poured it into 2 jade cups. She smiled and said, "I heard young Master Lin say that young master he is injured, so it is inconvenient for you to drink. This spring of Chang and is mild and not strong. It is sweet in the mouth. Young master he should be fine after drinking a little." He Yen smiled and said, "Miss Ing Xiang is still the most considerate." Ing Xiang pursed her lips and smiled. She put down the jug of wine and retreated behind Chu Zhao. "Last time when I saw brother He in Shuajing, I was in too much of a hurry and didn't get to know you well." Chu Zhao smiled and said, "Since we met in Liang Province, it seems that we are fated to meet. Let's drink a toast." He raised his wine cup and lightly tapped it against the air in front of He Yen. He Yen understood and raised his wine cup as well. He thought to himself, last time during the middle of autumn, he got drunk and got into a fight with Xiao Ju. He even crushed his zither. He definitely couldn't repeat the same mistake tonight. However, this wine wasn't strong, so she wouldn't get drunk like last time. Moreover, she only drank a little, so there shouldn't be any problems. She tilted her head back and poured all the wine in the wine cup down her throat. He Yen was stunned. Chu Zhao was also stunned. After a long while, Chu Zhao smiled and said, "Brother he is indeed forthright." He Yen. He had a habit of drinking in one gulp. He wanted to drink in small sips, but his hands were subconsciously moving. When he came back to his senses, he regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. He really wanted to scold himself. Why couldn't I control my hands? However, He Yen praised, "What a fragrant wine." Ing Xiang snickered. Chang and spring isn't something you can drink every day. In the Chu estate, there's only one remaining pot left this year, and it's here. Is it that precious? He Yen was shocked and pushed the wine cup back. He didn't dare to drink anymore. Although this wine is precious, it can't be compared to you, brother He. Chu Zhao smiled. He reached out to take the wine pot and filled He Yan's empty wine cup. Without Chang and spring, you can buy the 18 immortals. Without like-minded friends, you won't be able to find them so easily. He Yen, she said, "Brother Chu, do you know that you're the #1 dreamer of all the women in Dawei?" Chu Zhao was stunned. "Now, I think you can add men into the list." He was so gentle and generous to men. Any man who stayed with him would be in danger. The courtyard was silent. After a while, Chu Zhao laughed heartily. He shook his head and said, "Brother He, you're really interesting. I'm telling the truth." He Yen was very sincere. "Brother He, you flatter me." He waved his hand. "I don't dare to be #1. Qingli and spring smelled refreshing. It wasn't as fragrant and strong as the 18 immortals, but it was quite strong. He Yen felt a little lightheaded. When he saw the gentle and charming smile of the person in front of him, he raised his wine cup and said, "Brother Chu, you deserve it. Let me toast you." He downed the wine in one gulp. On the other side, Lin Shuanghe was looking around for He Yan. "Have you seen He Yan?" he asked. Xiao Mai had finished eating the barbecued meat. She went to steal some from the bonfire. When she heard him, she turned around and said, "Are you looking for a He Go?" A He Go was just taken away by 4th young Master Chu from the capital. "Chu Zhao?" Lin Shuanghe asked curiously, "Why did he take Brother He away?" "To drink." Xiao Mai scratched her head. "He said he would treat a He Go to a taste of Chang and Spring." When Lin Shuanghe heard the news, he immediately rushed back. When he reached Xiao Ju's room, the door wasn't closed. He pushed it open. Xiao Ju was sitting at the table, wiping her sword. Chang and Spring wasn't an ordinary sword. It had to be cleaned every day to ensure that the blade was crystal clear. Lin Shuanghe asked, "Do you know where He Yan went?" Xiao Ju didn't bother to answer him. "Chu Zhao took him to drink." Xiao Ju looked up. "So, aren't you worried, big brother?" Lin Shuanghe slammed his fan on the table. "That's Chu Zhao we're talking about. Move aside." Xiao Ju said unhappily, "You're blocking the light." Lin Shuanghe moved to the side. "Don't wipe it." In public, Chu Zhao is Su Jingfu's man. If he wants to recruit He Yan to his camp, what will you do? I heard that He Yan's strength is one of the best in the Liangzhou guards. If such a talent falls into Su Jingfu's hands, it will be very troublesome. When he saw that Xiao Ju's expression didn't change, he went around to the other side. "In private, how can you let your girl drink with another man?" As soon as he said this, Xiao Ju stopped what he was doing. He looked up and glanced at Lin Shuanghe. "Who told you that she's mine? Come on." Lin Shuanghe obviously didn't believe him. "If she's not yours, how can you let her live next door with a door in between? You even let her pick the lock. How come I didn't realize that you could do this before? Are you interested?" "Xiao Ju. If you don't have anything else to say, then get out. Don't bother me." "Xiao Huaijin, you're not Chu Xilan's opponent if you're so fierce." As he spoke, he heard a rustling sound coming from the middle door of the house, as if a mouse was shuttling in and out of the clutter. The two of them looked up and saw a silver wire sticking out of the one keyhole on the door. The silver wire twisted in a crooked manner and accurately pushed the lock pin inwards. With a clack, the lock fell to the ground and the door opened. Lin Shuanghe clapped his hands. "Good skill." Then he looked at Xiao Ju. "And you said she's not yours?" Xiao Ju was speechless for a moment and stood up. He Yan walked over from the door. She walked very slowly and steadily. When she saw Lin Shuanghe, she even greeted Lin Shuanghe with her hands cupped together. "Brother Lin." "Lin Shuanghe. Why aren't you calling me Dr. Lin anymore?" He Yan acted as if she didn't see him and walked over to Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju's gaze fell on He Yan. The young man was wearing the red uniform of the Liang province guards. His hair was neat and tidy as he bowed respectfully to Lin Shuanghe. At this moment, Lin Shuanghe and Xiao Ju were both stunned. The window wasn't closed and the wind blew in, causing the scrolls on the table to flip slightly. It brought with it a burst of coolness and a faintly discernible aroma of wine. It was faint but not real. The sweet and refreshing smell was like the spring day in Chang and city, sparkling and beautiful. Her gaze was even more sparkling than the spring sun. Xiao Ju felt a chill run down his spine as he felt a sense of déjà vu. She vaguely remembered that someone had looked at her with the same gaze on the night of mid-autumn. "Have you been drinking?" As he spoke, he subconsciously pushed Wan Xiangqin closer. When this person was drunk, it was impossible to tell if she was sober or not just by looking at her face. However, her actions would only be inconceivable. Lin Shuanghe smiled and picked up his tea, planning to take a sip and watch the show. He Yan looked up and gave Xiao Ju a big smile. "I can memorize the way to university now, father." Lin Shuanghe spat out his tea. Chapter 121. I know how to recite, father. Xiao Ju looked at her in disbelief. "What did you just call me?" He Yan stared at him with clear eyes and said seriously, "The way of the university is to be virtuous, to be close to the people, and to stop it being virtuous. Knowing when to stop leads to steadfastness, being calm leads to tranquility, being calm leads to thoughtfulness, being straightforward leads to virtue. There is a root and an end to everything, and there is a beginning and end to everything. Knowledge is to investigate things. One is to cultivate one's body. The thickest is the thinnest, and the thinnest is the last. Lin Shuanghe was stunned at first, but then he gradually reacted. He pointed at He Yan and asked Xiao Ju, "Is my little sister drunk?" He Yan suddenly rushed over and threw herself into Xiao Ju's arms. She hugged his waist and almost pushed Xiao Ju back 2 steps. She buried her face in his chest and rubbed it. She stammered, "Father, I know how to recite. I've improved." There was a dead silence in the room. It was hard to describe Xiao Ju's ugly expression with just a few words. Lin Shuanghe covered his face and his shoulders shook. He couldn't stop laughing. "Io, Huijin, I've seen people treat you like a husband, but this is the first time I've seen someone treat you like a father. How does it feel to be a father? This little girl is too obedient. She's very good at reciting books. She's very talented." As if encouraged by Lin Shuanghe's words, He Yan raised her head from Xiao Ju's chest and stared at Xiao Ju with sparkling eyes. "Father, I'm now the first in the Liangzhou guards." Xiao Ju grabbed her arm and tried to pull her hand away from his waist. "Let go." He Yan was very strong. Xiao Ju didn't know if it was because she threw rocks every day, but he couldn't pull her hand away. He Yan raised his head and looked at him. "You can test me. I can answer anything." She looked like a child who got first place and wagged her tail to show off. Xiao Ju face-bombed. "Let go first." "No." She hugged Xiao Ju's waist even tighter and wanted to stick her whole body to him. Xiao Ju desperately moved back, trying to distance himself from her and not let his body touch hers. Unfortunately, it was futile. Xiao Ju wanted to pull He Yan's hand away. Lin Shuanghe said, "Sister He Yan is still injured. If you move her, you'll to do it. Another half a year has passed and it's not good." Xiao Ju's to Xiao Ju. "Just let her hug you for a while. To be. She was a little girl who had come all the way to Liangzhou and hadn't been home for so long. She must be missing her father." He made a hugging gesture. "Can't you give her the warmth of home? Don't be so petty. You're not the one who's at a disadvantage." Xiao Ju was about to speak, but the person in her arms had already buried her head in her chest. She continued to recite in a muffled voice. "You are a general. You are both tough and soft. You are also a general. Mortals judge generals by their bravery. Bravery is one of the few things that make up a general. A brave man must be flexible. If he is flexible and does not know the benefits, it is impossible. Therefore, there are 5 things to be cautious about. The first is reason, the second is preparation, the third is fruit, the fourth is war, and the 5th is agreement. Reason is to govern the masses as if they are widows. Preparation is to go out as if they are facing the enemy. Fruit is to face the enemy without thinking. Although the war is to defeat the enemy, the war is to start. Receiving an order and not rejecting it. Returning after defeating the enemy is the etiquette of a general. The day my teacher came out, there was glory in death, no disgrace in life." Lin Shuanghe listened in a daze. He knew the previous one, but he didn't know this one. He asked Xiao Ju, "What is my He Mimi reciting?" "Wu Zi's Art of War, Treatise on Generals." Xiao Ju was slightly surprised. She actually knew this? "My He Mimi is really knowledgeable." Lin Shuanghe praised, "You can even recite this." "Of course." He Yan poked her head out from Xiao Ju's arms. "As a general, this is how it should be." He Mimi is really ambitious. Lin Shuanghe smiled and said, "You want to be a general." "I was originally a female general." Good. Lin Shuanghe smiled and covered his face with his fan. "Look at your ability." He Yan raised her head again and looked up at Xiao Ju. She happily asked, "Father, did I recite it well?" "Father again." Xiao Ju's feelings at this moment were indescribable. Outside the door, Shen Han had just walked in when he saw two people hugging through the open window. When he looked again, it was actually Xiao Ju hugging He Yen. He Yen hugged Xiao Ju's waist and said something softly. Shen Han was stunned and his face turned red. He only felt that it was unbelievable. Damn it. Although he already knew that the relationship between these two was not ordinary, seeing such an intimate scene with his own eyes was still shocking. Shen Han pondered the meaning of Xiao Ju's words. Could it be that she still had feelings for He Yen? Perhaps they had already renewed their previous relationship and reunited? There was still Lin Shuanghe in the room. She just stood there and watched. Didn't she feel that she was the extra one? Xiao Ju was being intimate with He Yen. Didn't she feel awkward being watched by Lin Shuanghe? The big shots from Shuajing were really hard to understand. In an instant, Shen Han felt tired. He turned around and tiptoed away. Forget it. I'll just pretend that I didn't see anything. In the room, Lin Shuanghe was about to die of laughter. Xiao Ju's face was ashen. She tried several times to pull He Yen down but failed. He Yen hugged his waist tightly as if he was hugging a family heirloom. Father, I've improved. I'm number one now. Why aren't you saying anything? She was a little sad. Can you praise me? Xiao Ju said, I'm not your father. It would have been better if he didn't say this. As soon as he said this, He Yan's eyes suddenly filled with tears. She looked at him tearfully as if he had done something evil. She asked, You don't recognize me either? Xiao Ju paused. Suddenly, an inexplicable sense of irritation appeared in his heart. He was most afraid of women's tears. Especially in this situation, it seemed as if he was the one who made He Yen cry. Sure enough, the divine hand in white, who was most protective of girls, immediately stood up for his newly recognized sister. He said, It's just a matter of one sentence. Look at how you made the little girl cry. She's such a sensible and smart child. If you don't recognize her, others will rush to recognize her. Xiao Huijin quickly praised her. Immediately, right now. Xiao Ju was speechless. He suppressed his anger and lowered his head to look at her. She was still dressed like a teenager, but her frowning and pitiful appearance was really a little girl. Perhaps she had mistaken him for He Sui. Oh, but was He Sui usually very strict with her? Even when he was drunk, he had to gain his father's approval. In an instant, Xiao Ju saw his own shadow in this girl. He was discouraged and resigned to his fate. He gave up trying to pull her hand and said, You did very well. Really? He Yen immediately looked at him with sparkling eyes. Really? Xiao Ju spoke against his conscience. Thank you. She was a little embarrassed. I'll do better next time. I'll make father even more proud. Xiao Ju had a splitting headache. He only said, Then let go of me first. You're hugging me too tightly. But I really like hugging father. He Yen revealed a very satisfied smile. She greedily hugged him and did not want to let go. I've wanted to hug father like this for a long time. Why can my brothers and sisters do it, but I can't? Lin Shuanghe was still smiling. When he heard this, his heart ached so much that tears almost fell. He only said, Is sister He being bullied at home? Her father doesn't even hug her? Xiao Ju was also very puzzled. In the secret letter from Shuajing, He Sui only had one son and one daughter. He Yen only had one brother. How could he have a sister? I'm number one now. He Yen stared at Xiao Ju and said, Father, aren't you happy? Xiao Ju, he said expressionlessly, I'm very happy. Then what do I get as a reward? Reward? Xiao Ju frowned. What reward do you want? He Yen rubbed her face against the buttons in front of his lapel. Her face was very hot and it was very cool. However, Xiao Ju's body stiffened. You don't touch me. As soon as he said this, he saw He Yen let go of his lapel. She felt something from his waist and proudly showed it to Xiao Ju. I want this. That won't do. Xiao Ju reached out to snatch it, but He Yen dodged. This person was drunk and her mind was not clear. However, she was still agile and her footsteps were not messy. Just by looking at her appearance, one could not tell that she was drunk. He Yen lowered her head and looked at the thing in her hand. It was a jade pendant carved with a snake. It was a rare black jade. It was warm and cold to the touch. One look and she knew it was a treasure. She loved it so much that she could not put it down. "Thank you, father." Xiao Ju was so angry that he laughed. "I didn't say I'm giving it to you." Lin Shuanghe stopped him from snatching the jade. He said, "Why are you arguing with a drunk person? Let her play with it now. Tomorrow when you're sober, you can ask her for medicine. How can she not give it to you?" However, he touched his chin. "Sister, he has good taste. She saw the most valuable thing on you at first glance. Not bad." Xiao Ju was too lazy to pay attention to him. However, she did not try to snatch the jade from He Yen. "Watch me." Lin Shuanghe walked in front of He Yen and coughed lightly. "Brother He, let me ask you. Do you like this jade?" He Yen played with the jade pendant in his hand. "I like it. Do you like Chu Xylan?" "Chu Xylan?" He Yen asked in confusion. "Who is that?" "You're drunk and don't remember this person. It seems like you're not with Chu Zhao." Lin Shuanghe smiled. "Then do you like Xiao Ju?" "Xiao Ju, are you done?" He Yan's answer was unexpected. She looked up as if she was thinking about the name. After a while, she nodded. "I like it." Lin Shuanghe's eyes lit up. "What do you like about him?" "That's me." He Yan held his head. "I'm so sleepy." After he finished speaking, he fell on the soft couch and fell asleep. Lin Shuanghe stood up straight. She said waste. Xiao Ju did not hear what He Yen said. She was a bit annoyed. "What?" "She likes your waist." Lin Shuanghe opened his fan. "She's too direct." Xiao Ju threw a teacup at him. "Get lost." On the other side, Ying Xiang put away the empty wine pot in the room. The smell of spring in Chang still lingered in the courtyard. Chu Zhao took off his outer garment and sat down on the couch wearing only his inner garment. The beds in the Liang province guards were not as hard as the beds in the capital. Although they were not as hard as the beds, they were not comfortable. Ying Xiang walked over and knelt in front of the couch. "Young master, this servant did not do a good job and was not able to win over He Yen." The youth called He Yen was very young. Just now, he drank a pot of wine and looked drunk. However, he wanted to discuss the art of war with Chu Zhao. Chu Zhao did not understand the art of war, so he listened to the youth speak with assurance. In the end, he probably got tired and left alone. Ying Xiang was very confident in her appearance. Although she did not dare to say that everyone would fall for her beauty, such as Xiao Huijin and Chu Xylan, she was more than enough to deal with a new recruit of the Liang province guards. Who knew that tonight, no matter how gentle and flirtatious she appeared, He Yan's gaze was only filled with admiration and no evil thoughts. Men had different tastes for women, and it could be seen at a glance. Although He Yan was shocked by her beauty, he did not have any other thoughts. This made Ying Xiang feel defeated. When her master, Chu Zhao, heard this, he was stunned for a moment. Then he shook his head and smiled. "It's not your fault." Ying Xiang raised her head. "Fourth young master." Chu Zhao looked at the incense burning on the table in the room. This was the calming incense he had brought from the capital. He was always a light sleeper, so he always brought it with him wherever he went. His eyes flashed back to when he caught a glimpse of the woman's lively eyes under the white veil at the horse track in the capital. Who would have thought that there would be a woman among the new recruits of the Liang province guards? He slowly smiled. When He Yen woke up, he was in his own room. He was sleeping soundly with half of his legs dangling off the bed. He did not even cover himself with a blanket. Outside the room, the sun was just right. A ray of light shone in through the window. It was so bright that it hurt his eyes. For a moment, he could not tell whether it was day or night. He Yen sat up and shook his head. He did not feel the pain of a hangover. On the contrary, he felt refreshed. She thought to herself that Chang and Spring was indeed much better than the inferior yellow wine of the Liang province guards. Although the alcohol was strong, it did not go to the head. There was a reason why it was expensive. Last night, she had been dragged away by Chu Zhao and his servant girl. She had gone to Chu Zhao's room to drink 2 cups of wine. She seemed to have drunk a bit too much. The alcohol had gotten to her head and made her very sleepy. She did not know when she had returned to her room and fell asleep. However, judging from the current situation, she should not have caused any trouble like last time. He Yen planned to get out of bed and pour himself a cup of tea. After a night's sleep, he was very thirsty. As soon as he moved, he felt something in his hand. When he looked down, he found that his right hand was tightly clutching something that looked like a jade pendant. What kind of toy was this? When did it get into her hand? He Yen was stunned for a moment. He opened his palm and carefully examined it. The black jade pendant in his palm was not big, but it was very delicately carved. The snake pattern was complicated and gorgeous. As she moved, it emitted a gentle light. It did not look like an ordinary jade pendant. Did she get drunk and rob someone last night? He Yen and the jade pendant stared at each other for a moment. They were still at a loss. Forget it. He might as well go out and ask someone else. He Yen thought for a moment. He first put the jade pendant on the table. Then he got up and washed up. When he was done, he grabbed the jade pendant and went out. He also wanted to ask Song Tao Tao if there were any leftover steamed buns. He had woken up too late in the morning and did not even make it in time for breakfast. As soon as he went out, he met Shenmu Shue, who lived not far from here. Shenmu Shue was carrying a medicine tray to the medical hall. When he saw He Yen, he stopped and greeted He Yen. "Miss Shen," He Yen asked, "is eldest Miss Song here? I have something to discuss with her." Shenmu Shue said, "She is not in the room. She went to the martial arts arena. Why are you looking for her? If it is important, I will help you pass on the message when she comes back later." He Yen scratched his head. "It is not a big deal. Since she is not here, forget it." He turned around and was about to leave. When he moved, the jade pendant in his hand was revealed. Shenmu Shue was stunned. He hesitated and said, "This jade?" She seemed to know who the owner of this jade pendant was. "Miss Shen has seen this jade pendant before." He Yen smiled calmly. Shenmu Shue still looked surprised. "Why do you have the governor's jade pendant? Xiaoju's? Xiaoju's jade pendant, why is it with her?" He Yen also wanted to ask this question. She also did not know. What did she do when she was drunk last night? Did she fight with Xiaoju again and snatch his jade pendant? Looking at Shenmu Shue's suspicious eyes, He Yen coughed twice. "This is indeed the governor's jade pendant. When we were talking yesterday, Governor felt that it was inconvenient to wear it, so he asked me to keep it for him for the time being. I was about to give it back to him. But, Miss Shen, brother He." Lin Shuanghe's voice came from behind. He must have heard the conversation between He Yen and Shenmu Shue. He smiled and waved his fan. "Miss Shen, are you going to the medical center?" Shenmu Shue nodded slightly. "Then go quickly. The medicine will be cold if you are late." He then said to He Yen, "Brother He, you have not eaten yet, right? I still have some pastries. Just eat some to fill your stomach." He Yen said, "Thank you, young Master Lin." Shenmu Shue bid farewell to the two of them. He Yen followed Lin Shuanghe to his room. She hesitated and wanted to ask questions, but she did not know where to start. Lin Shuanghe put a few plates of salty pastries on the table and poured a cup of hot tea for her. Seeing her hesitant appearance, he smiled and said, "Are you still thinking about the jade pendant?" He Yen was surprised. "You know, last night, when Sister He got drunk and entered the room in Huaijin, I was there from beginning to end." Lin Shuanghe supported his chin with the handle of his fan. "Sister He really opened my eyes." He Yen felt more and more uneasy after hearing his words. But thinking carefully, she always had a sense of propriety. It was impossible for her to make a scene and lose her composure after getting drunk. At most, she would spar with Xiaoju. But how could Xiaoju be so weak? Not only was she beaten up, but she also had the jade pendant stolen from her? Last night? I didn't do anything out of line, right? She asked tentatively. It would have been better if she did not ask. As soon as she said this, Lin Shuanghe seemed to have thought of an interesting scene. He first tried to hold back his laughter, then couldn't hold it in anymore. He slapped the table and laughed wildly. He Yen looked at this refined young man who was laughing uncontrollably. He did not care about his image at all. He did not look like the elegant young master from Shuo capital. He Yen was so anxious that her heart was scratching. She waited for Lin Shuanghe to finish laughing before asking, "Dr. Lin, what did I do to make you laugh so hard?" "Nothing, nothing." Lin Shuanghe waved his hand and smiled. "Actually, it was nothing big. I just wanted to let Xiao Huijin experience what it feels like to be a father at such a young age." He Yen dropped the scallion pastry in her hand onto the table. "Did I call him father?" Lin Shuanghe asked curiously. "You actually still remember?" He Yen covered her face. She really did not remember. But she remembered that when she was young, there was also a family banquet. At that time, she had gone from the last place to the third place from the bottom, hoping to be praised by her father. In the end, no one cared. During the family banquet, she accidentally drank a mouthful of plum wine as osmanthus stew. At that time, He Yen had not yet joined the army. She did not have the tolerance to drink 1,000 cups and was drunk after 1 cup. After she was drunk, she hugged He Yuanliang's leg and called him father. She even asked He Yuanliang for a reward. When she woke up the next day, the He family said that it was because He Yuanxing was too strict with He Yen. That was why she thought that second uncle was acting coquettishly. Madame He, however, did not like it and scolded her in the room so that she would not say anything wrong in the future. But in the end, it became a hurdle in her heart that she could not get over. Because she had never been acknowledged, she especially looked forward to it. Because she saw other sisters acting coquettishly with their fathers, she longed for her father to pat her on the head and say, "You did well." Perhaps it was because she saw Lin Shuanghe in the Liangzhou Guards, which reminded her of the things that happened when she was young. What she thought about during the day, she dreamed about it at night. Even when she was drunk, she could not avoid it. Instead, she became a joke. Forget it. What was done was done. So what if she could turn back time? He Yen put the jade in her hand on the table. "What is this?" "This is Huijin's reward for you." Lin Shuanghe held back his laughter. "Reward? You memorized very well. You memorized The Way of University and Wu Zi's Art of War in front of Huijin. Huijin was very pleased and gave you this jade as a reward." He Yen. "I snatched it, didn't I?" Lin Shuanghe failed to hold back his laughter and laughed loudly. As he laughed, he slapped his fan. "Sister He, you didn't see Huijin's face at that time. I've known him for so long, but it's the first time I've seen him so embarrassed. Which woman in this world would dare to hug him and not let go?" He was forced to retreat step by step. He even gave away his family heirloom jade and had nothing to say? "Only you, sister." He cupped his fists at He Yen. "Only you." He Yen was dizzy from his words. She caught the key words in his words. "Family heirloom?" She looked at the jade on the table. "This one?" The night before Madame Zhao's zodiac, she dreamed of a big black snake with 2 pieces of jade in its mouth. It was circling around the pillar in front of their residence. Later, after Xiao Jing was born, she took the name Ruby. There was a bandit gentleman, like gold, or tin, like a jade. After Xiao Ju was born, her family name was Huijin. He Yen said, Huijin held Yushi, so he couldn't show his poverty. "Yes, that's what it means." Lin Shuanghe put away his fan. The 2 brothers' names are both related to jade. Because Madame Xiao dreamed of the big black snake, the Empress Dowager bestowed a 2-colored jade, half black and half white. It was made into 2 jade pendants with snake patterns. The white one was given to Xiao Ruby, and the black one was given to Xiao Huijin. Ever since I've known Xiao Huijin, I've never seen this jade pendant leave his body. He Yen looked at the jade pendant in front of her and suddenly felt that it weighed more than 1,000 pounds of gold. "That's why I said, Sister He, you have a very good eye." Lin Shuanghe praised, "Of Xiao Huijin's entire body, apart from himself, this jade pendant is the most valuable thing. You didn't miss out on either of them and took them all. Brilliant, amazing, beautiful." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.